we have to tighten our belts and say that is a priority. Sometimes being responsible makes us have to say no to other things that are not as important. And last week, after I went to that meeting, I had to leave at 8 o'clock because I was so upset because I couldn't stand the thought of spending all that money on something that it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that we don't need. There's been other things. Maybe people have other ideas about that, and that's fine. But this is my opinion, that if we don't waste money on things that aren't important, then we might have money for the roads. I think I'll quit.
Maybe we could just let you know where we're at with roads, Mrs. Jolly.
Oh, yes.
The council's actually asked staff to put together a study for bringing all roads up to an acceptable driving level, not just maintain.
No, that's not acceptable.
Not just to maintain, but to repair.
My road is patched soon after I brought in my little petition. My road is still literally breaking apart. Patches break apart.
Let me try this again.
They don't
We've
help.
asked the staff to come up with a plan on how to repair all of the roads, fix them so that they're not just bumpy and cracked. And the plan that has been presented a few months ago is going to require approximately $4 million a year indefinitely.
I know, I realize that.
Okay, so in order for that to happen, we're now looking at what are the resources available to make that happen, to make that plan real. And that presentation is coming in front of us very soon because it is a priority. It's one of our top 2 priorities this year that we've discussed. So roads are right up there. Is there something specific other than that you're looking for?
Well, I think you better let the citizens know that roads are priority because they don't believe it. Citizens don't believe it.
Well, we can do that. We can let them know.
Because all they hear about is what the plans are for the Great Spacious Building. So I appreciate that. Because I appreciate all your work, but I'm just living on a bad road is getting tiresome. And everyone I talk to, they say, oh, that road's bad. Oh, I don't know which road to put down, which one's the worst. And it's a big concern of the people that live on bad roads.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else? Yeah. No?
Matt Godsey, 1026 East, 1100 North. While I share the same sentiments as Mrs. Jolly about the roads, I would like to actually commend the council for their actions last week in the selection of the RFP for the public safety building. In my opinion, my professional opinion, as an engineer, I think you guys made the right choice, the same choice that I would have made had I been in your position. And that's regards to the quality of the people who presented, as well as the cost. I think that the BONE will give you the best analysis and best information for the cost, because not only are they going to be able to do the same as everyone else, I think they're going to give you added value by the experience that they do have. Any of the 4, in my opinion, would have been just fine. They would have all been a good job. So that's a accommodation to staff for presenting to the council the right people to be able to do the job. All my questions were answered, which I have a pretty high bar. So I just want to commend the council for their decision last week on that.
Okay. Anyone else?
I wanted to give a shout out to one of your employees that showed to me that just the opposite of what has been said about the council and the workers, and that's to Dion, for taking the time to show me 3 houses that I was interested in seeing, because one of those houses was before you to decide what you're going to do with it and everything. And so if citizens really are concerned, maybe they can show that by coming and being a support and asking. That's all I had to do. And he took the time to show me. I don't know any other city here in Utah County that I could go to that a director would take that kind of time to walk me through, answer my questions and everything. There was no hostility or anything else. So when I hear these things, complaints about people being hostile, yeah, there's a lot of people that live off of a grapevine. And, but if they would take the time to find out for themselves really what the issues are that they're talking about, maybe they'll see a little bit of different attitude, because I think you're doing a marvelous job. I don't always agree with the votes that you have to make, but so what? When you don't have a predetermined perspective at things, you handle those disappointments pretty good. And so I want to thank you, the council, and I want to thank your workers. I think we have the best. I really do. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, anyone else?
I thought Jack would take care of this for me. My name is Molly Andrew, 1107 Nathaniel Drive. And I just wanted to invite Mrs. Jolly in January to set the weekend aside to come to the budget retreat so that she can hear how you guys discuss everything and what goes and what stays, and really the fine line you walk to fund things in our city. And also, I just want to correct the Great and Spacious Building. After sitting on the committee for a whole year almost and listening and knowing that the concerns of the citizens and how that was addressed. And I think that the way MOCA took care of it and the way that the chiefs were involved, I don't think it was a Great and Spacious Building after all, and it would have met our needs for quite a while. Thanks.
Okay, anyone else? All right, we'll close the open session and come back up here. Any comments on the consent items? Okay, if not, I'll call for a motion.
I make the motion that we approve the consent agenda items.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Sid and a second by Eric. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. And then you should have all received in your packet a bio. Is there any discussion on that? Or? Yeah, Rachel's right here. Rachel, you want to step up and just introduce yourself so people know who you are? Yeah, please.
Hey,
Acevedo.
I'm
Did I get
Rachel
that right?
Acevedo. It's my daughter Kendra back here. What to say?
Just tell us a little bit about yourself. How long have you lived in Pleasant Grove and or where are you from?
I've been in Pleasant Grove for about 4 years. Lived in Mexico for a while growing up.
And what made you interested in being on the Beautification Commission?
Because when you posted about volunteers, I'm like, what can I do? I need to get out more, and it just seemed like a good fit.
Love it.
So
Good. Oh, that's great.
When I interviewed Rachel, she said, I don't necessarily have experience in this, but I'm willing to learn anything I can. And I thought that was very impressive.
You'll have a great group to learn from. The
That's
beautification does a great job.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion.
Make the motion. Oh, go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, I'll make the motion, Mayor, that we appoint Rachel Acevedo, say it for me?
Acevedo.
Acevedo, as a beautification committee member.
And I'll second it.
Okay, motion by Ben, second by Diana. All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Glad to have you on board.
And we're grateful for the good quality and the generous volunteer spirit in our city. Awesome.
Okay. We have no presentations, so we'll move on to item 9, which 9A is a continued item to consider the request of Josh Wynn with Georgetown Development for a 68-lot mixed housing development site plan and phasing plan called Garden Grove, located at approximately 15 South, 1300 West in the Grove Zone.
Okay, Mayor and Council, this development is something we've been working on for quite a while with the developers, and they have been working with the property owners on 1300 West or Proctor Lane. Project is known as Garden Grove subdivision. It is the first project that falls within our new, clarify, new as in within the last 2 years, requirements for mixed housing developments. Anything previous or anything existing currently as far as our multifamily housing projects were developed under a different code. So this will be the first. So the proposal is that there will be 3 types of housing. Now, it's not just a proposal, but it's a requirement of our code that any projects over 5 acres in size need to have 3 different types of housing within that project. There are 68 units, density of 8.45 units per acre, maximum is 12. Majority of the units are single-family homes, small lot single-family homes. 41 of the units are that, and then also 17 units of townhomes and 10 units of live-work spaces. So live-work, for those who don't understand what that means, it's a 3-story building. Bottom floor is commercial space. The upper floors, 2 upper floors are the residential condominium or townhome. So right now this is showing the vacant piece of ground, mostly vacant. There are 2 residential homes on it. The Bean and Robinson families own all of this 8 acres of ground here. And they're selling it to the developer to accomplish this development. This shows that the property is in the mixed housing subdivision of the Grove Zone. So this is a layout according to the plat or proposed plat, which is not on the agenda tonight. We will see that coming forward. But what we have here is a division of the phases of the property. So you've got up on the north side here, single family homes, and then all through the center area are single family homes. They are small lot. The ones that are in the middle are considered garden court homes, so that their front doors face each other within this garden court area. And then in the rear, which might otherwise be considered the front, is the street with the garage access. So they all share a common court area here, although there will be some smaller 3-foot fences to designate the property lines, but it will have an open field throughout the area between the homes. So that occurs on this area here as well. Along Proctor Lane or 1300 West is 10 units or in groups of 5 of the live-work units that have the commercial space on the bottom floor. And then towards the rear on the east side are the townhomes that are just the residential units there. So that is the overall. I'll show you a little bit more with the coloring. It shows you the green spaces that are involved. So the surrounding area will have some buffer green spaces. We do, since these are single family homes, do consider the areas between the homes as open space here. And then this area back here will have a playground and a little bit down here on the bottom, and then just minor areas. So these homes here all have small backyards and small front yards as a standard development would have, but it's just a small sized lot. So the actual open space doesn't feel as open as you might see with larger apartment buildings that are required to have a big open space, because these have a lot of small lot single family homes. That's how they are able to accomplish that. So there's just a visual of the project there, how it fits in with the other development that surrounds here. That one again. Okay, so we have a landscaping plan that has been reviewed and approved by both the Design Review Board and the Planning Commission. And then that's just broken down here if we have questions how things will look between homes and such. And here's an idea of the single-family homes. Now, if you're familiar with the Mayfield project down by the freeway, there are some small lot single-family homes developed down there. This will be somewhat similar in nature to those. And there's a perspective of, this is as if you were looking out of the living room window across the way to the other homes in front of you. You've got a small designated front yard for yourself, but it all feels open between. And here's a view of the town homes that would be on the east side. Yeah, just a lot of visuals there. I don't know if we need to focus on a lot of them. Then the live work units, these are the ones that face on to 1300 West. So having the garden district theme with the use of brick and glass substantially there has a nice design style to it. So as this project was brought forward and reviewed, I'm just going to skip forward a little bit, by the design review board, and these items were brought forward and recommended also by the planning commission, that certain things were not quite ready, but some of them have been submitted. Some of them are still in the process of being submitted, but all of these are included in what we consider the final planning and engineering requirements that would be a part of your proposal or your motion tonight if you decide to approve it. So the lighting plan, a larger playground with swings, seating area, and pergola, provide windows and garage doors to enforce parking, add more evergreens to meet the 30% requirement, provide landscaping plan stamped by a licensed landscape architect. They had the landscaping plan, they just needed that stamp. And the drainage plan has been submitted. So anyway, I just wanted to let you know that this has had some fairly significant review. The Planning Commission did recommend approval. We have found it to meet the requirements as long as these final things are submitted. So
Can you show us the phasing one more time?
yeah, it'll take a second to get back up to it. So it's basically divided. Well, let's see. I think there was a second. It's not the same thing there, but I'll just stop here since it'll be shorter. It's basically, so you've got 1300 West here, an extension of 100 South, which will curve down and meet into Pleasant Grove Boulevard eventually. But for now, it'll be just this portion extended. So it's basically cut in half this way, so that the northern half would be one phase and the southern half another.
And is the back the third phase or is half the back?
Let me go back. I don't recall exactly where that line was drawn, but it was basically two phases. Sorry, we just got a ton of exhibits here. Oh, there it was. So,
Okay, so they're gonna portion it.
right,
Looks like a 50-50.
pretty close.
That looks great.
Well, you guys have done a terrific job. I mean, working with the developer and all the creative ways, like the setbacks that we talked about. Very nice.
Well, I know the developers had more than his share of headaches with this because let me just tell you, frankly, the requirements that we've come up with are very difficult to follow to achieve any level of density. So I think if our goal was to severely restrict the density in this area, we are accomplishing that.
Okay.
Well, we appreciate him for meeting those needs.
So-
No, it looks fantastic. I'm
Developer is here if you have
to
questions. for
finally
him.
see that type of development in the Grove area.
I love it. I just have a couple of questions. First of all, why the evergreens? So did I hear that we were having a problem keeping the evergreens alive? down
Was it ever an issue with the particular zone and the evergreens? And
I don't know. We do require 33% of the trees to be evergreens, so it's not completely evergreens, but we're looking for a mix. I know that there have been certain locations that have had difficulties with that, but I don't think it's overall through there. I don't know.
We're talking about the trees themselves
Yeah.
having
Yes.
difficulty
Yeah, so-
staying alive.
I've seen a lot of problems in doing inspections at final, and mostly at warranty, seeing a lot of the evergreens that have died. I think the high groundwater table is a challenge for them.
Too much
It
water.
can be done successful. I don't know if there's another way, but That is what the ordinance requires right now.
Right.
What is Dion, what do you?
Different varieties of evergreens grow different in our climate. I-15, we lost a lot of certain species down there just due to the dryness. But a lot of your spruces do really well with the high water. So
Just select the right ones.
yeah, it's just the landscape. We'll just need to look into it.
Okay.
All right, and then the other thing was, so these are just questions. It's not that I'm having complaints. Explain to me the garage door, the windows in the garage door.
Okay, so this was a recommendation that came out of the design review board. They had garage doors that were just flat, just doors. The design review board recommended that having the little windows in there can provide an additional security, eyes on the road type of a thing. So it's not a requirement. It was a recommendation.
Great, so explain to me again the why, so that you can look in your garage door?
No.
So-
You can look outside to your,
Oh.
just the
So for
mirror.
me, I'm thinking of people looking into my garage.
I don't think that this is
I have a
really,
mess.
I think it's more of a psychological thing. And it's the windows that are at, about eye level. If you're standing in the garage, you can look out, but you can't see the whole thing. It's just kind of more a psychological thing for security purposes. If you're on the driveway in front of the garage and you see there's windows there, if somebody's in the garage or house, they can see me. It's just kind of a security thing.
If you're 7 feet tall.
7 feet tall, you can see in the garage.
It's quite all right to have questions, really. Okay, anybody else have questions?
I got my mess.
Comments? No?
I think the developer may want to have a few words. John
Want to say
Dester is here.
anything?
I'm able to clarify a couple things. I'm losing my voice.
Okay.
I don't sound like any other meeting that I've been here, but I might be able to shed a little light on a couple things.
I remember what the deal with the windows in the garage was. It has to do with more to do with parking, to where we want everybody to use their 2-car garage for their cars. And there's a propensity to fill a garage full of stuff and then park your cars on the driveway. And so the deal is, in our project, almost all of the homes have driveways. So unlike maybe other projects and some other designs where, and part of mine has a garage door that on the far right-hand side, the townhomes, the garage door opens right out onto the driveway. And that's the common driveway. But all the single-family homes in there in the middle have driveways. If you fill your garage full of stuff, you can park 2 cars in the driveway. But the intent is park your car inside. So really the recommendation of the Planning Commission was the windows are for someone as tall as Dagan to walk up and take a look in there. And if it's full of stuff, then they're actually in violation of the CC&Rs, because our CC&Rs are very specific. And it says the garage is for cars only.
So that'd be enforced by the CC&R.
It is. It's enforced by the HOA.
Okay.
We'll have to go get Dagan to peek in there and look. But anyway, that was one thing. Now, the one other thing I think we have to deal with, and I don't know, Ken, the project, this came up with the Planning Commission, and it has to do with these actual requirement for the fir trees. Do you remember this issue? Did you even find out about it? That the project is technically located in a mountain zone or something, because your staff report, and that was a revelation to me. The day we were coming to Planning Commission, I found out, what? It's a mountain zone. What does that require? Because Ken and I had always understood it was in the garden zone. Thus, the name of the project is Garden Grove. And the design is more like, if you've been to New Orleans, the Garden District are houses that are very traditional and they're really cool. They're all different. No 2 houses are alike in there. Well, that's what we set out to do. So luckily, your zoning ordinance empowers you to waive the requirement of the architectural requirements of the mountain zone. And I need to ask you to do that actually, because it's not designed in any way for mountain zone. Thus, the fir trees were left out. We didn't know about any of those requirements. So if it's in the garden zone, and I really want you to gerrymander your line and just put me in the garden zone because we designed it that way. Can we ask for that? That
So-
if I've
So
got,
there's a little bit of a technical difficulty. I think that what's in front of us right now contemplates a certain amount of work that's gone on and review by
It has.
staff, et cetera. So to spring something like that on us at this point and ask us to include it in here, I don't know if we're,
I think it's in there actually.
There's a provision in the code, in the design districts, that the city council can waive any of these requirements.
what is that?
Is that part of what
Is
they're?
that part of what you have
actively
advertised as an action?
And it's actually in the staff report.
It's part of.
It
the
mentions
review.
it.
When we've done this before, it's always been part of the site plan approval. Let me,
And I think the planning commission knew about it, dealt with it, and knew that that issue had to be determined by you folks. That you would look at our architecture, look at what we had designed and what was contemplated in the garden district. But it talks about it somewhere in here and empowers the city council to deal with that.
Okay. Why don't you give us a couple minutes?
You
while
bet.
he looks that up.
I didn't mean to spring it, but it was relative to the pine trees, actually. If it's in the garden district, then the pine trees aren't required. So the high water table and stuff like that won't kill the pine trees. It's just, that issue becomes moot if indeed we're approved with what we have submitted. In other words, our landscape plan, our architecture, that kind of thing. If it's okay, your ordinance and the staff report recommend, somewhere in here, it talks about that.
So, question, so is it the pine trees we're concerned about? We're not changing the 30% landscaping. It's just that you don't really want to plant pine trees.
Well, I'll plant pine trees I think the pine trees, I know that that's a requirement in the mountain zone. And it makes sense, that mountain architecture, that all was coordinated.
Easier to eliminate pine trees out of the mountain zone
Yeah,
than it is to
that's what I-
change the mountain. to
Or in this
garden.
particular case, because of
Right.
the finding with water and
Right.
the
We
particular
can just do
trees.
that as a finding,
Yeah, but rather than go through the whole
right, changing the.
changing everything, I'm not sure that that's.
What is Tina?
Well, I think what he's asking and what I've heard is that all through the process of developing this, he was under the assumption that he was in the garden district.
That's it.
So everything that he's done complies with the garden district design guidelines. At the very end of this process, after looking at a map, he finds out that he's not in the garden district, he's in the mountain district, which has different requirements. So based on the advice of community development, he's moved forward with this site plan, which has been reviewed by the planning commission, and is asking you to approve this site plan, which complies with the garden district and not the mountain district. Have I got that right?
That's it. And the one other addition is the actual architecture. In other words, everything we've designed, and when the staff report just keeps mentioning that I don't have the proper eaves, big 4-foot eaves and all this kind of stuff, because it was never designed for that. But luckily, the provision in your ordinance allows for the city council to accept something different. I guess that's really what we're asking, is that everything we've submitted is what we've prepared so far and thought we were going to do. And then I read that mountain zone thing and said, boy, I couldn't believe it, that there's a line there that we're on the other side of the line for mountain. But I think we're really one of the last large pieces of property in this area, especially, that would even be in the mountain zone. I'm not sure that you'd set up much of a precedent if you indeed let us do the architecture we have.
Sam, what's your recommendation on that?
You talking to me?
Yes, Ken.
Okay, so.
Ken, what's your recommendation?
In section 10.14.20, under urban design standards, letter B, it says applicability, the standards outlined in the following subsections, which talks about the mountain district, the garden district, the interchange district, shall apply to all new developments within the Grove zoning district. A waiver to these standards may be granted by the city council in keeping with the intent and purpose of this chapter.
That's it.
So when we had doTERRA come forward, they also required a waiver for some of their design styles that didn't match the garden district. And we brought that forward as part of the site plan approval, mentioning it at the time that it was presented that this was being requested, and then it was approved as such. And so I felt that this, now I have to apologize. Since I was gone when this came forward to Planning Commission, and nobody has informed me that we were dealing with this. This is the first time I heard of it.
You didn't know that.
I didn't know. So, but that's not a problem necessarily, because we do have this ability to grant this waiver.
We have the ability. I'm just wondering from a planning perspective, making a change, just like we would make a change on anything else, is that the most advisable thing?
Well, and let me address that.
Go ahead.
We have a lot of development opportunities that either have come forward already or are coming forward that are challenging our design districts as to what exactly the design is. Already doTERRA has challenged that. We have another project with the Void coming forward that will also challenge, maybe challenge isn't the word, ask for a waiver of. And so in my mind, I think it's time for us to review those design districts and determine, are they still current with our needs? Do we need to perhaps lift or change or alter somewhat our design standards? Perhaps just come up with one general criteria for the entire Grove Zone instead of trying to break it up into these different districts. I think it's time for us to do that. And I can see us continually receiving more requests for waivers. And at that point, there's really no point in having a design district if we're just always going to go away from it.
Okay, so in this particular case, you discussed it at Planning Commission, Eric?
We did.
What's on this particular request for this waiver, what was the discussion?
So again, because the planning commission can only recommend, that's why I think Royce.
Yeah.
was one of these.
I was out of town and Royce covered this one.
And so we told Royce, we have no control over that. That's again on the evergreens and everything else. We have no control. We can only recommend that the city council review that and then recommend it moving forward.
So was it a recommendation to change the?
We recommended that the city council review this and see if it's something that the city council wanted.
Well, we ought to review it if we're gonna make the motion on it.
Okay, so let me clarify. Your recommendation to review was to review the districts and those requirements.
And that the city
But your
council-
recommendation for approval of this project was not, was it or was it not subject to reviewing these district
We were okay
requirements?
with the project. It was just the waiver that we had no control over.
So what I'm hearing is the planning commission has recommended approval of this project as presented, with the idea that you will apply a waiver on the design requirements. Addition to that, or separate from that, that the city council ought to review this section on design district requirements.
Because it passed February, things like that.
Because it's been done. Okay. All right.
Do you have a comment, Tina?
Well, I hate to be a stickler about notice. But really, waiving those design guidelines is a separate action from approving the site plan. So if that's what was being requested, that's what should have been advertised as approval of the site plan and request for waiver of those design guidelines. In the interest of having neighbors in that area come and say, you know, we don't agree with waiving those, we want it to comply with the mountain or whatever. I mean, it should have been noticed as a companion decision that you guys would be making, not just on the site plan, and then when we get here, we tell you, oh yeah, oh, by the way, we also need you to consider waiving these design guidelines.
So you're saying there's a noticing
I'm saying
concern?
I have a noticing concern.
Okay. But it doesn't prohibit.
When we waive, though, we don't send notice to the neighbors.
No, but I'm saying it on the agenda,
On
it
the
should have
agenda, it should say
said
that.
site plan approval and request for waiver of design guidelines of the mountain district. And as a practical matter, probably the public may not care, but strictly speaking, they were entitled to the notice that that was something you were going to be asked to consider, because it is a waiver of the ordinance requirements.
But because this is not a public hearing, we can just bring it back next week.
Right, yeah, you don't have, I mean, we can just put it on the agenda for next week and just change the agenda item notice, because it's not a public hearing.
Would it be acceptable to approve what's noticed and come back for the waiver.
It would be backwards unless, yeah, it would be backwards.
So the waiver does need to come either at the same time or prior to. Okay.
I have a question. When did we put in the design areas? How long's that been? Because
Oh, we initially put it in maybe 5-6 years ago. We had actually 4 sub-districts. There was, what was it, the Tuscany, I think was
yeah, and we
one
did
that we
away
had.
with that. didn't
Right, we incorporated that with the garden district. So
Right.
basically the interchange has its own design criteria, that
Right.
sub-district. And then everything up to a certain point, which is basically 100 South, was considered garden. And then above that up to State Street was mountain. So they had their own design criteria. In a way, I think it was a good idea. Right now, I'm really questioning the value of having those separated design. I think there's so many exceptions that it's the value of having it, I'm not sure is as strong as we thought it might be.
Well, and Pemberley and all of those that were developed down there around this development didn't have those
Right.
design, those type. I mean, there was the design review board type things that they had to meet those criteria, but not the specific, it had to be mountain or garden and all of
Right.
those kind of things. So I don't see how it's going to it's not going to stick out like a sore thumb or anything because it's going to look like everything that's already down there.
Yeah. Well, it'll have a little different, they all
Yeah,
look a
it'll
little
look-
different, but
Yeah, but what I'm saying, it's not gonna go, oh my gosh, they didn't do it with the mountain design versus Pemberley.
I think our
and all those.
idea when we established these design districts was we've got a lot of acreage that is undeveloped. Wouldn't it be cool if we had these certain areas when you come into this area and this feels like this
Yeah.
type of development because it's all kind of designed that way? Well, I think that was more of a lofty vision than in actuality. And so, we have brought certain things under the mountain district since that time and garden and stuff. But I think overall that type of effect is much, much more effective if you're master planning and building the whole area at
Right.
once.
Right.
So Ken, are we saying that the design is currently compliant with the mountain district, not the
No,
garden?
it's within the mountain district. It is compliant with the garden district.
So it should be compliant with the mountain district?
It should have been.
Okay.
Nobody is now recommending that it go back and be changed to become that. We
So
are
it's
we are
basically a
accepting the
house.
idea that it is designed to the garden district.
Okay. So
So here's,
is there an
So I
issue?
would- So if you want to be really particular, the motion could be bring it back next week and add that language to the agenda, notifying the public that you're gonna approve the site, consider the site plan approval and their request for a waiver. Or if you feel comfortable going forward tonight, then you can grant their request for the waiver and consider the approval of the site plan at the same time. I was just raising the issue as the attorney that I
No,
would rather
agreed.
have it had it the other way.
It's the language that I'm wondering about. Can we be specific as to which design guideline it's going to comply with?
You can say, the motion would be, if you're willing to grant the waiver, the motion could be, we move to approve the site plan, which is compliant with the garden district design guidelines and waiving the requirement to comply with the mountain district guidelines.
I think that's the safest way if you don't want to continue. So, any other discussion?
Yeah, I have a couple of quick questions. I'm generally very favorably disposed to this idea. I think it looks good. I'm in favor of revisiting some of our design guidelines and lifting some regulatory burdens, if that makes sense. I'm curious how we got into the situation where we thought we were in the wrong, different district than we are. Do we have errors in our maps, or is it just a human error?
I think it was an administrative error. So exactly where that started, I don't know, but I know that I personally was following that error. So I have to apologize, and I also have to apologize that I was not aware that this was an issue tonight. But I don't think it's a huge deal either way.
I'm inclined to agree. The other question I had was just for Eric, maybe, or any members of the planning commission that were here, whether the planning commission fully understood this difference between garden and mountain when this issue arose and was discussed. This was,
It was brought up at the close.
okay.
So again, we have no control.
Right.
We can only recommend again, and that's why.
Okay, I think we understand. So it rests with the council whether they want to continue or approve it tonight with the language that Tina's proposed. So any other questions or discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion. And please be specific with the language.
We just can't, well, I'd like to make the motion, but I'd like Tina to say the motion.
Depends on what we're saying.
Well, how about you start? She'll say that one sentence.
And then I'll say
Yes.
yes. Okay. I would like to make a motion that we, let me see, approve the site plan, the 68 lot mixed housing development site plan and phasing plan called Garden Grove, located at approximately 15 South, 1300 West in the Grove Zone, with the condition
That we waive the requirements of the Mountain Design District, finding that it is in compliance with the design guidelines of the Garden District.
Okay. And
Did it sound
adopting
familiar?
all the other.
And I'll second that.
And adopting.
and adopting all the exhibits and conditions and findings of the staff report.
Okay, we have a motion by Diana with help from Tina.
It sounded like me.
We have a second from Eric. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I hope you understand, I knew that we needed to do that. If it was approved without that, I wouldn't be in compliance at all, with that mountain. So I just winged that on you.
We're glad to see it's moving forward.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
All right. The next section are items with public discussion. 10A is a public hearing to receive comments on the proposed Pleasant Grove City fiscal year 2000, budget amendment, 2014-15 budget amendment.
Okay, I'll go through these. There's really not very many, so it's all right. I'll spend a few minutes and we'll just go through them one by one. We did this last week, and so nothing's different than what we talked about last week. But there's 7 items on there. Again, this is just to amend this year's budget for things that have come up. So the first thing, lines 1 and 2 refer to the rec center. So when we started the first year, we have a budget for the rec center, budgeting certain programs, certain activities, and certain revenues. As I was looking at what programs we're doing and what revenues we're bringing in, we are doing a few more. There's more money coming in through program fees and membership fees, and there's also more programs going on. So these first 2 just allow us to use the money the additional money that's brought in from the rec center to fund those programs. 85,000 of it's related to personnel costs and 30,000 of it's related to program costs. The line item 3 just relates to a reimbursement agreement we have with doTERRA, where we originally put in that the street light that's there at 13th West, and they have reimbursed us that for the cost of that. So this is just budgeting the receipt of that money. It's really not it's money that was spent last fiscal year actually, and they're reimbursing us. 4th is the item related to the purchase of water share. So, and talked about this, that there's a kind of a one-time opportunity to buy a large amount of water. And so this would allow us to transfer money to Metropolitan Water District of Pleasant Grove and allow them to purchase that water. It's $150,000. Line 5 is related to the new fire equipment that we've purchased and the fire equipment that we're selling. So we sold that old fire engine for $50,000. This allows us to use that $50,000 for equipment related to these new the apparatus that we've recently purchased. Line 6 is when we did the water bond refunding back in January. I probably should have put it on this last amendment. It just slipped. It didn't get done. But we had closing costs associated with that. That's $155,000. That is being paid from the bond proceeds. And again, that allowed us to refinance those bonds and save that money that we talked about previously. And then the last one is to actually purchase the water from Orem that we talked about. That's in this year's budget.
Rent water.
Rent water, sorry. I said that wrong. But yes, so rent Orem's water for this year to help us get through the water year. So is there any questions on any of those?
Just a comment.
Sure.
In reviewing it, and thank you for the detail. Every one of these expenses had a corresponding revenue associated with it.
Right.
So from a net perspective, this is a zero net.
Right. There's no lowering of a fund balance or anything like that. It's not.
Well, the exception is the water.
But yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. But we're using water money to do that.
Right. But even now that is being offset by a drought.
No, I'm talking about.
Purchasing the water.
Purchasing the water.
Yeah.
That money's coming out of the fund balance of the water fund.
Right.
Over into that.
So that's why the revenue source says fund balance, meaning we're using water money to do that.
We had a long conversation I guess it was last week, about water and how it works, the Metropolitan Water District. And I was wondering if you could maybe share some of those comments for the public that are here that might have questions about how the city, to comply with state law, purchases water through the Metropolitan Water District. And
So I'll do my best. Tina can jump in if I speak because this is some of it's a legal thing. But a number of years ago, when I say a number, not a lot of years ago, like eight or 9 years ago, something like that, there was a state law passed that did not allow cities to sell or even rent the use of water. Is that right?
It's in our state constitution, so it wasn't a state law that was passed. It's always been that way.
Okay. Was it not?
Municipalities, once we own water rights or shares, we're not allowed to divest ourselves of those.
Yeah. And so a lot of the cities around here have what they call a metropolitan water district of that city. There's one in Orem, there's one in Pleasant Grove. I think there's one in American Fork too. And so really what happens is this metropolitan water district of Pleasant Grove, it owns the water shares. And the city just rents the water from Metropolitan Water District. So really their only purpose is to do that. Their revenue source is a lease agreement with the city where the city pays them a certain amount of money and they own the water. They pay the water canal company assessments and things like things to that nature. And then the city's able to use that water. So that water is water that's primarily our irrigation water.
If we wanted to sell water, Metro Water can sell water, Pleasant Grove City cannot sell water.
Right. So it gives us some flexibility in that.
Sorry, to follow up on that, if Metropolitan buys this water and not Pleasant Grove City, if we have a cash in lieu of, a developer comes in, we sell that water at a premium, we get our money back in, some on top of that. If that's what we want to do, we might just want to use it all for the city, but if there's an opportunity maybe to make a little money on it, then we'll have that option. And so if it's with the Metro, we have the option. If it's with the city, we don't even have that option.
And then the question becomes, if it's paid for out of our city's water fund, we transfer the money to Metropolitan Water District to purchase the water, and then the water does get sold at a premium sometime in the future. That money gets put into the Metropolitan Water District, and how do we ever get it back into our water fund to reduce the burden on the residents?
Well, I mean, ultimately, Metropolitan Water is trying to acquire more shares so that the city has more water that's available to rent, right? So Metropolitan Water, there's really nothing else they can do other than buy and sell water. So if they had that water and were to sell it, now in the 5 years I've been here, Metropolitan Water hasn't sold any water. I'm not sure it's their intent to ever do that. But that water would probably come in and be used to purchase other water shares if it was needed. I don't see a situation, and with our public works people, they can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see a situation where Metropolitan Water would be looking to sell water other than to help a development come in.
But we have historically taken some cash in new payments for water obligations the developers have had.
Yeah, so that's where a developer would pay money rather than contribute water
And
shares
that money would sit in Metropolitan and be used to purchase future
to purchase
water.
additional water.
To date, we've never tried to revert any of that money back to the water fund of Pleasant Grove City.
Well, they just don't have that much to begin with. I don't-
Yeah, I mean, if we ever got to the time when we didn't need, we had enough secondary water that all of our needs were met, then yeah, maybe, they would do that.
The Metropolitan Water Board is our residents. I mean, it's something if the city went to them and said, hey, we need to transfer some of this money back in, I think they would listen to us. I mean, they are their own separate entity as far as decision making, but we're working very closely with them on issues like this.
How much money are we talking about?
In their budget?
Yeah.
Their annual budget is like $420,000.
And this transfer is hundreds of thousands of dollars that we're.
Right, this is an additional $150,000 this year because of this one-time opportunity to buy this water.
And you and I had a good, very valuable conversation about this. I thought it might be beneficial to some of the public who I know have had questions
Sure.
they've raised to me about these very issues. So it's good to have that understanding. I think Dager may have had a comment or no.
I think the primary purpose for setting up the metro is not the sale of water.
Right.
It's the ability to trade. So for example, Metro holds shares in North Union Irrigation Company, holds shares in Pleasant Grove Irrigation Company, holds shares in American Fork Irrigation Company. And Linden City's primary source of their secondary water is North Union Irrigation Company. They hold shares of Pleasant Grove Irrigation Company. And that's not a good example because they don't have a metro. But if there was an opportunity between two metros to exchange water, so if American Fork has some PGIC shares, they want their AF shares because it works better for them, those two bodies could switch. If it was AF City and PG City, we're constitutionally forbidden
To
from
divest ourselves
exchanging it.
of
And
water
I'm
shares.
actually wrong there because the cities can, I think, within themselves, but they couldn't with an outside entity.
Right, we can do it among ourselves, but not with an outside entity. The Metro just provides us flexibility in managing our water shares, and they're able to do things that we can't as a municipality. But as, I've been here forever, and I cannot remember us ever selling water shares. Ever.
That was actually a topic of discussion at the last board meeting, and it was pretty clear that none of the current board members had any intention of selling water. They were more concerned about their ability to take advantage of these types of opportunities.
Other questions? I think water is a great subject to always discuss because it's only going to get scarcer as we grow. Okay, open it up for public comment now. If you want to come up and state your name and address.
Blaine Thatcher, 120 North, 1400 East. I'm just a follow-up question here. So with this Metropolitan Water District, how is it that we're transferring the money to the district? Is it, are we leasing water or are we just transferring funds to the district? Didn't quite catch that.
So the district's owned by the city, right? It's our
Completely.
Yeah.
Okay.
The district it's an entity functioning for the city.
Okay.
Of Pleasant Grove. We appoint all of the board of directors that belong to that, including our public works director is a member of that board. When we want to bring water into the city or manage water, we will do that using the Metropolitan District, Water District to do that. In this particular case, someone approached Dagan, two different groups approached Dagan with water shares. Water shares can be more valuable depending upon how old they are and where they're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So the one that we're talking about here, as a council, we approved the purchase of it because it can be delivered to our system into our own irrigation. The other one we turned away because it was going to be harder or not possible at all to get into our system. So when we agreed to go ahead and purchase it, the water district approved a certain amount of money that they had in their budget. And then we approved the $150,000 to go along with that. to acquire the shares of water and place it into service inside our district.
Okay, so there's a permanent acquisition, this isn't a lease of shares, this is a permanent acquisition of shares.
Correct.
Okay,
And that's different than the lease
correct.
that we're doing with
Correct.
Orem on a temporary
Okay,
basis.
so it's simply a transfer of funds from the city to the Metropolitan Water District, right? So if the Metropolitan District is a wholly owned subsidiary, so to speak, of the city, how does it qualify under the Constitution then?
It's more like a.
Because isn't it really the city then still buying and selling shares? I mean,
Yes.
It's more like a holding company. It's more like a holding company, not a wholly owned subsidiary in terms of by law, it has to be its own separate board, it has to be its own separate entity. But as a practical matter, we control,
as I say, if you have total control and you're transferring funds in between, it seems to me there's no legal distinction between the two entities.
well, the state has said there's a legal distinction and we can use this
Okay.
mechanism.
All right, well, just checking. So
It's a good
then it's
question.
just a transfer of
And
funds.
that's why water is such a good subject to discuss.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I just want to ask, and it might be a tangent, but I run on the canal quite a bit and the tank was full.
Molly Andrew?
Molly Andrew, 1107 Nathaniel Drive. The tank was full on the canal between 500 and now it's empty, or not empty, but you can't see the level, and it's rained and rained and rained.
Right.
And I find it really sad that we're spending so much money on water, and residents still, Alpine School District still waters. And I know that's a tangent, it's not a budgetary item, but we're still spending a lot of money on water, and residents are still wasting.
Yeah.
And companies are still
And
wasting.
you're right. The water, that particular issue, I mean, it goes around all the time and
Yeah.
we need to be better at communicating. We've talked about different forms of ways to enforce or police. We've talked
Yeah.
about education. We've talked about all kinds of things. I don't think we've solved the problem yet, but I do think that educationally, if we were to have the discussion about how we actually get water, where it comes from, how it gets into that reservoir, and whether or not the rain we've been experiencing helps us long-term, that's where it would
Yeah.
start to make sense.
It would, and I think the education's important. There was a person on Facebook who was mad that we weren't holding it, but other people own that water and it has to go.
That and you need a
Is that
place to hold
correct?
it.
Yeah.
And we have reservoirs and they're full.
Our white reservoir right now is looking really good on top of the mountain. So hopefully
That's
we'll
a
be
day's
okay.
worth of water, maybe? Not even.
Well, it's better than it was.
Yeah, and that's
better
the
than it
part
was.
that,
So, and
I think that's where the education comes in.
And
Yeah.
to pipe in on the conversation, it really does pay to raise the voice. So
Yeah.
I just run up to the doors, I just knock and just say, hey, I just wanted to let you know, you've got water running down the gutter.
So what can we do with the
And
school
peop- and
district?
people- So, I got a call from a citizen and I ran up to the FM group,
At the church house?
at the church house, and I just said, I'm getting lots and lots of calls, what can we do? It literally only took them 4-5 hours to shut down all the water in 40 buildings, and it won't be turned on. I think as we raise our voices and just be kind, but just say, hey, this is money.
Yeah.
I think your voices really count. I've been watching your comments.
I
and others
don't
on
mean to be so
Facebook.
anal, but
It's good because if you think about it, the more the people that are over these various departments and entities hear the public saying
Yeah.
conserve water, eventually they wake up and do something about it.
Yeah.
So Scott, are they giving businesses in the school district and churches, are they receiving the same door hanger that residents are? Or what are they receiving? Because there's multiple businesses down on, by Macy's down there, their sprinklers have been on nonstop during the rain, the school district. So what are we doing? Because we're giving consequences to residents, but are we giving consequences to the large water users?
Yeah, I don't know, if we can do door hangers.
Somewhat. Some of the ones that are on culinary, it's a little harder because there's paying for their water. So we try to keep them, with the conservation the same as the others, but it's kind of one of them deals. It's kind of a double-edged sword with everybody that's not on secondary because they have to pay for the water, which helps us
And the Grove is on Culinary.
Yes.
Everybody,
Every-
everybody south
Macy's
of State
is
Street.
on Culinary, so they're not.
Technically, that shouldn't matter though. I think
No, I agree.
we should,
We still do
because
that.
part of it is a perception issue and we need to raise awareness. Alpine School District, we've talked to a few times and so I don't know if it's a matter of, giving them a door hanger or finding them or whatever, but if that's what it's coming to, that's what we need to do with them, because they use a lot of water, and if they're watering while it's raining, or if they're watering,
They are.
a day or two after we get 2.5 inches of rain, we can't have that, so
And-
we've got to.
Yeah, it's just not our city. I see it everywhere. And my daughter lives next door to a school in Layton. It's the same issue with this district, with the school districts everywhere. It's like, what do we do with this? Because that's a real frustration.
Well, the
Because it's
larger,
like they don't have to jump through the same hoops.
yeah, I mean, the larger discussion statewide is moving to secondary water meters. That's the discussion everybody's having. Because they're finding with education, with all the remedies, what we're doing now to fine and things like that, that slows it down a little bit. But until there is a financial consequence, a substantial financial consequence, we're finding that we're just not gonna get it flowing.
Just raise a few.
Can we enforce rain sensors on private or commercial or residential? No?
Well, I mean, if we change the ordinance and required people to have rain sensors, like we're gonna require them to have meters, but that would be mostly for new construction, I would think, not going back and retrofitting existing homes.
But anyone can add a rain sensor, and even not just to homes, but to a business or large water users. You can add a rain sensor anytime. Is that
Yes,
correct?
yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I just,
I'm just
we're
saying to
giving them.
mandate it now, but after the fact is a little more difficult.
I think most people go and turn their water off. We don't, but we have some that.
But there's businesses that they aren't there on the weekends, or the city or the large water user, whoever it is, that they're not there on the weekends or the nights or whatever, and then it rains for 8 hours and the sprinklers are going for half that time. So we give our residents consequences, but not the large water users who are actually using a good share of the water.
Yeah, and I agree, and that's the challenge. So whether we need to find Alpine School District or what we need to do with it.
Well, not just Alpine, I wonder if we can put a policy in place to address large water users. I mean, what are we doing to enforce, is our enforcement officer watching those businesses when he drives around? Like, what are we doing to enforce it? It's not just Alpine School District, it's businesses and churches. I mean, we're out there with the residents, but what are we doing? Is there a policy in place and what are we doing?
So is there a way we can sit down with Alpine School District and
Well, we already have. So here's our issue. We do sit down with them when we talk about these things. We don't see the action. That's what's happening. And maybe some schools are and some aren't. I don't know. I don't. Me personally, I haven't seen Manila Elementary watering anywhere, so I don't know if each school is different or how that works.
Well, they would control them differently, so maybe.
Well, it's
they're
different
more-
people on the control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
no?
and I wonder if it shouldn't come from instead of from us trying to find the Alpine School District, if every individual PTA should get involved and, approach it from a parent and involvement that way. I don't know.
I think that's great, and that would be great if that happens. We still have a responsibility, I think, to
Sure.
sit down with those guys and.
No, I agree, but
And, well, I mean, we can set up another one and sit down and say, at this point, guys, if you're gonna continue to water when it's raining outside, we as a city, because of the costs that we're incurring to provide this water, we're gonna have to fine you guys. And maybe as dumb as that might sound, if that's I mean, for Alpine School District to pay the $200 fee, whatever, but, I mean, technically, we disconnect.
Well, if it's a business, just connect. You're not gonna follow the rules, then shut your water off.
Can we multiply the regular fee by the acres they're overwatering?
Because, again, our system was set up really to address residential. It didn't necessarily set up to handle Alpine School District. But if we need to go down that road, we can. The frustration is we have these discussions with them and they tell us that they will comply, but I think part of it is Saturday night, it starts raining, there's nobody there, rains all day Sunday, they water on Sundays, and they don't have the rain sensors in place or whatever, so.
Every day of non-compliance, they have to fix one PG road.
Okay.
So instead of pitchforks, we're just gonna drive around with
So,
big T-bars.
I know this is really on the agenda.
Yeah,
I mean, we're talking,
a little bit off of what the agenda item, which is.
Oh, we're way off.
budget.
The question is, when is the next time we have the next part of our water discussion? We set up and had the preliminary that we were gonna work on a plan. We talked specifically about recommendations from beautification. And then there's another part where we get back together and talk more specifically about an implementation plan. I think that's where we bring all of our ideas and.
Yeah, so right now it's enforcement, which is what we're currently doing, but not, I don't think maybe we're missing the schools and the churches or whatever, and we need to kind of revisit that on how we're enforcing citywide and not just the residents. You know, the door hangers and things like that. We have what the beautification committee is putting out. And that's an education, they're kind of handling the educational arm. We should have our thermometer up soon. We got the numbers today, and we sent them off to Trent. So we're gonna have the thermometer on the front page that says, here's how much water we use and here's how much we should be using. So I think we're implementing, unless there's something that we're missing as far as implementation, I think we're already putting that stuff in.
No, I think if that's the case, then maybe what we're saying is that there's a heightened awareness and a desire among some of our residents to speed this up as far as getting people to actually turn their sprinklers off. And if that's where we're at, then what we're currently doing probably isn't as effective as we'd like it to be. So
So
we
are we
need to
talking,
step it up.
sorry, are we talking bigger fines? Are we talking,
That's where I think we need to have a separate discussion as a council around this subject, rather than try to make it as item number 7 on the budget discussion.
okay, so we'll put it back on the agenda to come back and talk, because I guess what I'm saying is we're already implementing every tool that we've already talked about.
Right.
So implemented or in the process of implementing. So if there's additional things that we need to discuss, let's put that on the agenda.
And I think there are, and I think the council's shown tonight they want to talk about it.
Yeah.
But obviously, we're way off subject, so.
Okay, we'll do that.
But as a community, speaking up is helping.
Very much so. I think
So
communities
the
speaking up
church
is
was
great.
very motivated to go out because of the phone calls that were coming in. So it's helping.
Okay, would anyone else like to address the proposed budget amendments for 2014-15? Okay, I'm gonna close the public hearing on that and bring it back up here. Any further discussion? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion.
There's no motion, right? There's no motion. I think.
Motion on this one?
Well, the next item is,
Oh, just to receive comments?
yeah, next item.
The next one is the actual adoption. Okay, so we discussed A. So then B is to consider for adoption a resolution 2015-015, adopting the amendment 2014-2015 budget and providing for an effective date.
Mayor.
Yes.
I'm making a motion to adopt resolution 2015-015, adopting the amended 2014-2015 budget and providing for an effective date.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Eric and a second by Diana. Ben?
Yes.
Sid?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Diana?
Yes.
Motion carries. Okay, item 11, these are items for discussion with no action. And if the public wants to comment, then we'll ask for the comment afterward. We had talked about having a discussion on the zoning in our Grove area.
Yes, so you should have in front of you a zoning map for the Grove Zone, and Ken's gonna also pull it. You have it for up here as well, is that right? So what Ken and I talked about is that we would show you a map and say, here's what the current zoning is, and then on the second page is a little bit of a summary as to what the zoning means. And so in essence, we have 3 zones in our Grove area. We have the interchange zone, which is just off of I-15, between I-15 and North County Boulevard. We have the commercial sales subdistrict, which is most of the rest of the zone, and then we have some mixed housing. Now, where you can see this is where it's already developed. We have a pocket of mixed housing here that's not developed, a pocket of mixed housing here that's not developed. And most of this is developed or is entitled to development, and then the same with this over here. So in the commercial sales subdistrict, we have some development. This is the doTERRA property here. They received an overlay to meet the needs that they had with a warehouse, but also some office space. And then other than that, we have the commercial sales subdistrict. So I'm going to have Ken explain and go over the one page on what the zoning means. What I asked him to do is we don't have every single permitted use. I think in the packets, did we put the full?
There is an item in the packet that says 11A that will give you a list of all the permitted and conditional uses in those subdistricts.
So on the one page,
Not on the paper, but
yeah.
on your packet sent in your Dropbox.
Yeah, on the one page, I just.
Is it a separate document?
It's a separate document, says item 11A.
Sorry, and that's, so on the one page, I just asked Ken to hit the highlights or things that are kind of unique to that zone that separate it from what the other zones are. So after Ken goes over that, I want to talk a little bit about the development process and how we fit in as a city, because of what usually happens when a developer approaches us and they don't agree with what the zoning is and they want to change it. I want to talk about that a little bit. And then we can have the broader discussion is if there's changes we want to make to properties or zones. I want to introduce Greg Perry here, just so he's probably going to want to speak at some point when we get to that. He owns this property right here, which is right now divided between mixed housing and commercial sales. They bought it, I want to say, about 5 years ago, and we had some initial discussions with them on kind of what their intent was to do this, have a office retail in front and then a housing component in back. I talked with Greg a couple of months ago. They're working on other projects, and now they want to re-engage on this. And it just so happened we were exchanging emails to have Greg sit down with Ken to talk about what's allowed in the zone. And I let him know that, hey, we are going to be talking about zoning on your property. We're not making decisions per se tonight, but he wanted to be here, and I'm assuming that he'll want to have a minute. So with that, I'll turn it to Ken, and then I'll come back up.
Okay, first I just wanted to point out this, we did show this map last month when we began our discussions on this of the properties that are available in the mixed housing sub-district that are currently not developed. However, we just wanted to point out this one tonight was approved. So even though it's not developed, it's now entitled for development. As mentioned, Mr. Perry's property has this portion within the mixed housing sub-district, approximately 11 acres. And then you've got the larger portion of this is owned by, what's the name?
Proctor.
Yes,
Oh, yeah,
Ray
Ray
Proctor.
Proctor.
Yeah, and then the back portion includes some pieces of the Smith family properties. So it's approximately 27 acres in total in this area. So 27, 11, so about 38 acres. One thing I did omit, there is a very small portion at the top end. It's actually off the map here. It's not a part of the current approved Mayfield development. It's about 2.5 acres. It was a part of the overall master plan that came before the city a long time ago, but we don't have any approved development on that property. So 2.5 acres, it would be similar in nature to what's going on out there if and when it does come forward. So really, those are the only available properties we have within the mixed housing sub-district. So otherwise, I just wanted to, and you have this information in front of you, but for everyone in the room for their information here, I'll just read through the purpose and kind of summarize what some of the components of that sub-district is. The interchange sub-district, the purpose of the Grove Interchange Sub-District is to promote the development of a regional center for retail, hotel/convention, and professional office uses with high-quality architecture and site design, and to create an attractive gateway from I-15 into the city, creating a unique signature image for the city. And this is the opening statement in that section of the code that refers to that sub-district. Items that are components to the zone that we have been working with and other information is that it's between I-15 and North County Boulevard, south of 700 South. Approximately 122 acres are undeveloped, 20 of which are planned. Intended for high-end quality retail, professional office, and lodging developments. Some areas are designated for less than 50% available for professional offices. Fast food restaurants are not permitted. Limited commercial uses are permitted.
And our convenience stores.
Yes, convenience stores, gas stations.
Convenience stores and gas stations are out.
Out.
You're not allowed in the interchange.
Right.
So
So it's a very
as we're doing
restricted.
this, can you just tell us how we're doing? Just
Okay.
are we complying?
Sure. So the most recent proposal that has come before us is the Valley Grove, the St. John's Properties development. I'll go back up to the map, point out. No, that one. So here's Pleasant Grove Boulevard that comes off of the freeway right here. Pleasant Grove Boulevard comes up this way. St. John's Properties has acquired properties right here adjacent to some existing professional office buildings. They are in their proposal now meeting the requirements of that zone. Otherwise, what exists out there is you've got the BMW, you've got the other professional office buildings that are in that location that meet the requirements. You've just got a lot of undeveloped acreage otherwise that is available for permitted uses. But again, the permitted uses in this zone are rather restricted to particular uses. Okay, the commercial sales sub-district, and I'll just hop back up again. This is kind of funny in shape. You've got the pockets of mixed housing in 3 different areas, but everything else in through here, including along State Street, along North County Boulevard, and then going up through here on Pleasant Grove Boulevard, all of this area is considered commercial sales. So the emphasis is just that, commercial sales or retail sales, although a lot else is also permitted. The purpose of the Grove Commercial Sales Subdistrict is established to create attractive Grove District commercial areas, allowing for a mix of land uses, including office, retail, civic/public, and utilizing the highest quality architecture and site design. The City Council may also authorize residential uses above the first level of commercial buildings. Now, this is something we may want to clean up out of our purpose because it's not otherwise permitted within the body of the text, but this is something that came from the original purpose statement that hasn't been changed. Development in this sub-district should contribute to the creation of a unique signature image for the city that encourages pedestrian activity, social interaction, and a quality shopping experience. So summary is it's along, so we pointed out where it's located. There's approximately 200 acres that are undeveloped, and many types of commercial uses are permitted with some restrictions, such as no storage, auto repair, those type of things. Mixed housing sub-district.
So again,
yeah.
How are we doing with that?
Okay. So far, we're doing fine. That again, it's a lot more broad in its ability to develop as compared to the interchange sub-district. So we've had doTERRA, we've had the fertility center and My Oil Business are the new ones, including the Aroma Tools. Yeah, I was thinking of the what's it called, the oil, holiday oil. Yeah. So all of these do comply with the permitted uses, and we have work towards architectural design quality there, and been a few waivers granted there, but by and large, it's quality development that has followed the permitted uses. Okay, let's see, did I read that one? No. The mixed housing subdistrict. The purpose of the Grove Mixed Housing Subdistrict is to create a compact, pedestrian-friendly environment of mixed residential uses, including a mix of various multifamily and single-family dwellings, public spaces, parks, and paths. Commercial developments are also permitted to develop in this subdistrict, either as a mixed-use project with residential uses or separately. So this is probably the most broad of permitted uses, area of permitted uses in the Grove, because it has basically everything that the commercial sales subdistrict allows, and then adding to that the housing components. So there's 3 separate areas, approximately 38 acres undeveloped, 8 of which are planned for development, which was approved tonight. Permitted uses similar to commercial sales, plus permits multifamily housing. Housing developments over 5 acres require 3 types of housing, with the lowest density type using the larger percentage of the project area. Must include single or 2 family dwellings. So again, with the mixed housing, even though it permits all types, not all types, but a large amount of types of commercial, it has developed, I was going to say largely, but I think 100% so far, as multifamily or mixed housing, and all as permitted uses. So I don't know if there's further questions with that. I just wanted to summarize the map. Sure.
So just a little history, and Ken, I think, was already going over this, but at least in the last 5 years in the interchange zone, initially there was not a requirement for 50% retail. That's something we changed, I want to say about 3 years ago, when we knew a project's coming in that we're going to be 100% office in there. And so when we talk about the vision of the Grove, I think the initial vision, I don't know, was set up in 2005, 6, 7, or whatever, a while ago. So I don't think anybody was here, maybe with the exception of Cindy. And so when we do talk about the vision, then that was the vision back then. What the vision is today, I think, is part of the reason we're having this discussion, to see if what was talked about back then is still the direction we want to go, or if we want to change things up a little bit, or whatever. The mixed housing came about, I want to say again, this was 3-4 years ago, because we did have some high density housing that was zoned and allowed in there. Excuse me. And the city council came back and said, look, we don't want high density housing anymore. So if we're going to have high density housing, we're going to limit it at this level, which was 12 units an acre. And so the mixed housing was set up, and Ken has talked about this with these different guidelines on the 3 different types of housing and landscaping requirements, which really make it difficult to develop that at 12 units an acre. And that's what the Garden Grove people ran up against, is they're following all the guidelines and they're getting about 8.5 units an acre. So if that's still the vision of the city, that we want to limit the high density housing, then the mixed housing is accomplishing that. If we feel like that needs to be further restricted or eliminated in the area, then that's another discussion to have, because we do have Shotgun Creek here, and Ray Proctor's farm are probably the 2 prime candidates for future housing. So we don't know how Ray feels about this. We haven't talked with Ray if we're going to take, and it's Ray and some of the Smith property there. If we're going to eliminate mixed housing from that, then we need to probably notify them and let them know. If we go through an actual rezone and change that to a commercial sales subdistrict, then there would be a public hearing and they'd have a chance to come in and talk about that. But I think if we want to head down that road, I prefer, before we get to the actual rezone part, that we have a discussion with them and let them know what's going on, so we can have some of that prepared before we get to the actual rezone. So this is the interesting thing that I find when it comes to development, is as a city, we control the zoning. That's when we say we have a vision, our vision is dictated by the zoning that we can control. So we don't own the property, so we don't choose who the property owner sells to. We don't get to choose which developer they work with. And then once a developer owns the property, we don't necessarily get to choose the exact stores that come in. You know, if it says grocery store and they bring in some grocery store that we don't want in our community, we don't have that option to say, no, we don't want that grocery store. So the zoning gets us so far. It probably doesn't, when we say we have a vision, it probably doesn't get us all the way where we need to go as far as what we would like to see develop as a community. Now, we do have the design guidelines, which can affect the looks of the type of development, but not necessarily the type of uses. And so if we're going to zone out uses, which we've done, then it's just a blanket. Fast food is not allowed in interchange. So we don't get to pick and choose which fast food restaurants we'd like in there or not like. It's either yes or no on them. But when a developer comes in, doTERRA is an example, and this is an example, the Walmart development with the housing behind it. They didn't meet our zone. And this is what we run up against, and this is what happens with staff. If somebody comes in and they says, I want to develop in the Grove, and we sit down and go over what the zoning is, and if they can't meet the zone, then they want an exception. So, of course, the staff, we can't grant the exception. The only people that can grant the exception is the city council. The planning commission can't grant the exception. So doTERRA, we did an overlay to make sure that they could meet the uses, the various uses that they had, which does not match the commercial sales sub-district, but we created the overlay to accommodate them so that they would develop in our city. And it was the same with this project here. There was an overlay created to allow that to happen. So the overlay is a tool to take what the basic guidelines are for the various zones and to work a project in that might not meet all of the criteria. And this is the challenge, I think, for our city council is we can determine the vision, we can determine the zoning, but what we're going to get, not all the time, but some of the time, is people coming in and saying they want exceptions to what the zone says. And so then the fun part about being on the city council is you get to tell them yes or no. Yes, we want your project in town and we're going to accommodate it by creating an overlay or changing the code in the zone. Or no, we don't want your project in town, and so we're not going to give you the exception. A good example of that was the storage unit people that came in a month or so ago. Storage units are not allowed in this sub-district. They were asking for an exception. We had the discussion. Ultimately, the council said, we don't want storage units in the commercial sales sub-district. And so we just said, we're upholding what the current zoning says, and we're not going to allow it. And so that project is now not going to happen. But we've, like I said, we have granted other exceptions depending on the project, and that's just been something that the city council has that power. So those are that's the basics behind it as far as the development process and kind of how we handle it as staff when we get. Now we try to be gatekeepers in some ways. We do have people approach, and if it doesn't meet the zoning and it just seems like a project on staff side of things that doesn't make sense, then we'll just tell them, no, we don't think the council's even going to consider this. But if it is a project we think the council might consider that does not meet the zone, then generally we arrange for them to sit down with you and kind of do that. Now, sometimes maybe we guess wrong, and there's projects that are coming in front of you that you guys absolutely don't want to do. Or, and I don't know, maybe we've told people you don't meet the zone and we're not going to get you in front of the council that maybe you would have liked. And so we try to figure out when we're approached that does not meet the zone on what to get in front of you and whatnot. So we want to be gatekeepers, and the fact that every single project that somebody wants an exception has to come in front of you. But usually if it's a fairly large project, or if there's some, we understand that there's going to be a significant revenue generator for the city, then absolutely we get that in front of you. And that's why the storage unit is, now they did it the right way. They went through planning commission first, planning commission to you guys. Now, some people, before they even get to planning commission, they want to kind of get the temperature of the council before they start spending a bunch of money on that. And our latest discussions as staff are, If somebody comes in and wants exceptions and we're not quite sure, we're just going to instruct them to go through the planning commission process. And if they need a change to the zone or are looking for an overlay, we'll just run them through the process. If planning commission recommends it, then again, it's up to the council to say yes or no, whether you agree with that. That's the decision you make. So that's philosophically how we handle those types of things. So maybe that's getting away a little bit from what we're discussing tonight. I just want you to understand the process that as we set up the vision and the the details on what the zone says, we'll always get asked for exceptions to that. That's never going to go away. So, and then we just deal with those on a one-on-one basis. So with that, that's kind of the background and the zoning, and so if the city council wants to make some tweaks to the zones, if we want to eliminate zones, rezone things, let's have that discussion, and we'll, as staff, see if we can get you there.
So, council, would you like to discuss the current zoning or just ideas that you've had about it, or?
I just
What
want to
are
throw
your
out one
thoughts?
thing. I just want to throw out one thing that I'm really concerned, and this has nothing to do with the zoning or anything else, but I think we'd be remiss in not figuring out where we're going to have some city parks and such in the area. There's going to be a lot of people, or there already is a lot of people in that area. And I know Dion, Scott, Ken, we have sat multiple times and trying to kind of go and figure that out. And the more it gets developed, the more people, housing's done. We are not, the vision from what I think we thought it was going to be, and I think we feel, in the whole city, is this open space and the ability to have that type of something in our Grove area, and we're not going to have it unless we have some way to trigger it with our developers or developments that come in, or we look at purchasing land in the area to provide that as a resource to that community down there.
So open public space.
Yes.
Yeah, and if I can just address that a little bit, because we have had discussions of trying to figure out if we can
Right.
get some property somewhere in here.
Uh-huh.
But kind of what it boils down to is either, as a city, maybe we can zone a portion of that open space so it can't be developed. Now, again, that's somebody else's property, and they might have issue with that because the value of their property
Sure.
decreases. Or as a city, we can go in and purchase the property with the intent of building a park on it. And usually when we've had that discussion, it just comes back to a financial issue, and I don't think we've approached any property owners there to actually get to a point where we're asking them if we can buy their property for a park. I don't think we've gotten that far. We have kind of taken a look at areas where it would make sense. It seems like that's the area we continue to settle on, is right in that area to do a certain amount of acreage of park. The funding for that would either be the park impact fee or would just have to be general fund money to do that. So,
Question, are all of the zones, when somebody develops it, what is the percentage of green space that they have to adhere to, 30%? Does that change by zone, or is that still in the interchange and the grove? And by the way, what is BPO?
so that's the overlay.
Grove Business Park overlay.
Okay.
To allow doTERRA to have their mixed uses.
All right, thank you.
So in the mixed housing sub-district, there is a requirement when you're developing multifamily developments to have 30% open space. That 30% does not carry through with commercial development or even with single-family housing strictly. Then it's the open space becomes their front backyards.
We saw some of
So
that
that doesn't-
tonight, right? With
Yeah.
So that doesn't provide anything for the public.
No.
doTERRA does have their nature reserve per se.
Right, and they chose to include that. They were not required to have that much open space, but that was part of their plan.
Well, that was with connecting with ours that we do have set apart for the nature part.
So we can exact property when somebody develops. Our issue becomes is trying to get that property all in one area so we can have a park of substantial size as opposed to just various pockets of open space.
Dion, do you feel like that's a need? Or do you feel like everybody there can just travel up to wherever we are? The
We're
other
trying
part.
to see a bit of an increase in participation in our program, just due to the number of the high density. Just like the PD and the fire, they see an increase in their area, we see it too.
So do you think it'd be better to have something local for them, or?
I think at one time we discussed more of a leisure type park in the area.
Yeah.
We do have on our Parks Master Plan identified in a bubble area, this area is planned for a future park.
And was it that, is it this
Yeah,
area?
It's right,
It's
yes.
in that area there, but I'm
Uh-huh.
just thinking it'd be nice to have all that area.
That's the most expensive area.
You know,
I know,
but this is
But
a,
it's all expensive.
this is a good point. If this becomes a priority for us, we could technically zone some of the Proctor property as open space. And again, have that discussion with Ray to see if that's even an issue to him or not. It might not be an issue to him. I mean, he might prefer, hey, when I pass on and whoever's gonna own this property after I own it, if the city's saying this is gonna stay a park and open space, yeah, go ahead, rezone it. That might be a good thing.
Call it Proctor Park and have them donate the land.
And and that happens too. I mean, people do donate property, whether it's for tax purposes or just being a good citizen and helping out the community, where they would do that. We could have that discussion with Ray to see if that's something that's possible in the future.
I think it's a great area. I know we've discussed it multiple times where it should be. I know it's expensive, but I think we're gonna lose if we don't have the conversation fairly quickly.
That's right.
We're gonna lose out.
Yep.
And it will seem to be, to me, poor planning on our part if we don't have some type of park or open space.
Do we have an idea of how much space we would be looking for?
I think it's on the Park Master Plan. Do you remember?
How many acres?
I think 3 to 5 acres.
Yeah, 3 to 5 acres.
3 to 5 acres in that general area.
So not ball fields. We're talking,
Passive open space.
Yeah.
So just open space where the public can go and picnic or sit.
Or have no, I was gonna say the promenade, but we'd have it downtown, but that type of activities,
Not
community
programmed
activities.
for any kind of recreation necessarily. Okay. 3 to 5 acres. Is that what I heard? Okay. All right, other comments?
I'll make another comment. So Scott kind of alluded to it a little bit ago about going back to the Ray Proctor thing. We're concerned, and I know we get many comments throughout the city about having even mixed housing or high density. Can we restructure any of these? Could we cut this across here?
So
And add that to the commercial sales?
yeah, as we talked with staff, if that's gonna go away from mixed housing, and if we're not gonna zone it, or at least park it open space for a park, we would recommend commercial sales. Now, this makes sense. This one might be a little bit more tricky, but
Right.
again, we have the property over here that can maybe
Sure.
address a little bit of that. But that, I think, as we've talked about as staff, then we would recommend just going to commercial sales sub-district. We're gonna remove that.
Yeah, it kind of stands out as that could be moved, changed.
Because, sorry if I'm interrupting here, but a lot of this depends on how this develops, but it feels like as this develops, this property could become part of a business park or something like that. That could pretty easily incorporate into a larger development. In fact, when Evermore was being developed, or when the property was being assembled, they tried to get that property. They wanted that, not for housing, but for a commercial use. And so I think just right now, the property owner is not interested in selling, and that could change in the future. But as we consider these things, that's something we can look at.
So decreasing the amount of mixed housing and
Increasing commercial sales.
Or open space. Since we're talking about the same land.
One of the most questions I get asked is, I guess, the mix has some concerns, even with the market being dictated right now.
Well, it's kind of sad because we've worked this many years to try to get the development that's now finally coming in. I mean, yeah, we've made a few boo-boos.
Okay, other comments?
Do we have a mechanism, Ken or Scott or Tina, to impose a green space requirement on commercial like we do on high-density housing? One of the things I liked about that indoor climate controlled storage proposal was they had a lake that they were gonna, or a pond, I guess, not close to a lake, but they had dedicated some green space on their site plan and proposal. Do we don't have any requirement like that?
We do that already, yeah.
Oh, we do?
That was actually a wetlands area that they had to work around.
Develop it anyway.
Well,
Similar to what Doterra.
Yeah, but they had planned to make sure that it was beautified to the extent they could manage it.
So my understanding is any development has a requirement for green space. And so again, that green space is planter strips, it's maybe little pockets of green space, but it's not a park.
Right.
And so if we want a park, that's a little bit different discussion than requiring green space for any particular development. But there is a requirement for each development that provide a certain amount of green space.
And it does say, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm remembering wrong, Ken, but it is usable green space. And so in the past, part of the complaint is that we have allowed them to count fire strips and stuff in their overall. And so several years ago, we added the term usable green space so that it tends to force them to conglomerate the green space into usable areas instead of counting little strips in between apartment buildings or whatever as part of their green space.
I agree.
Right, so what it is currently in the ordinance is 30% open space required, 75% of that 30% acreage has to be usable and contiguous.
Okay, thanks. I think maybe I misunderstood something you said earlier, Ken, because I thought you were saying that requirement applies to housing, residential, not commercial.
Right,
That's a
so
universal-
commercial, no, it's only to housing. So commercial requires a 10% open space requirement, but it does not require the usable contiguous.
Okay.
Does that count just like a tree in a parking lot?
It can be islands, pockets of, yeah, so
So it still
it's
is a
not
park.
really a tremendous requirement. I mean, it's really what you would expect to see normally anyway.
Would you like to see that, to discuss increasing that?
Well, I just want to understand what our options are. I mean, my broad philosophical approach is minimal regulation, free market, let the world, show us what the markets can do and let the private sector really impress us. But yeah, I mean, I want to know all of our options and have a discussion.
Well, to that point, Ben, if we don't have some sort of regulation, it just won't happen. And so to have some of that is in essence us saying, this is required. And,
Right.
Usually developers going to come in, maximize their property to the best they can. If we're asking for 10% open space, they're going to.
So to that point, in the case of like a doTERRA, they chose it to be in their best interest to develop large acreages of open space that was enhanced and beautified with trees and ponds and et cetera. In the case of Evermore, they chose their entire park was actually completely overcompensating for parking in terms of green space and open space. So we've had a couple of business entities that have come forward where it's in their interest to actually have that open space.
I think the flip side to that, Mayor, is the Walmart development where I'm sure they have their minimum because they want to max out where they can put their commercial pads and their retail pads. And so in front of the Jimmy John's, there's a park strip with some grass and there's some things there, but they're not going to the lengths that doTERRA is going to.
No, definitely not. And the kind of business that a Walmart is versus a doTERRA are they're not in the same arena.
Yep.
They're completely different. And the same thing would go for something like Evermore. It's a completely different thing. I think it almost seems like if you have a company looking for a campus, they tend to lean towards design of the building and acreage for open space and, aesthetics. And if you have a retail sales or something of that nature, definitely industrial park, they're looking for more maximized use of the space, as much blacktop or concrete or building as you can get. So the zoning is really key to determining both what you're going to attract and also how you set the stage for those people to come in and say, oh yeah, this is a place that we'd like to develop.
Yeah, and I mean, the zoning controls the use. I think it's more the design guidelines that control how it's being used. And so some of this could be tweaking design guidelines if we wanted more open space or less or whatever. Because generally speaking, the zone is just gonna talk about what the actual uses are gonna be. And those are two tools that the city council has to put a vision in place as to what type of development they want.
So let's talk about the overall spaces there. Cindy's brought up a point about perhaps mixed housing should shrink and commercial sales should expand. And then we have 1, 2, 3 different kinds of zones there. Is that right?
Well, if you're talking about, we have interchange, commercial sales, and mixed housing. The overlays are just specific to that property.
Right, and mixed housing is, so there's just 3.
Yeah, there's the
three
three
types
zones.
of zones.
Yep.
So we've highly favored commercial sales. It looks like the mixed housing, even according to the definition, is getting close to being maxed out.
It's just we're running out of property.
Right.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
by maxed out, it's
Maxed out
paying
meaning it's the one that's nowhere's close to being touched is commercial sales in this particular map, right? There's nothing on there.
Well, I mean, we have somebody that owns 40 acres here that's working on developing it. We're starting to develop along here. Now, doTERRA's bought a lot of additional property and we're not sure what their timeline or schedule is. But I mean, we are starting to see this develop, maybe not as quickly as we'd like, but.
Well, I'm not referencing time or anything. I'm looking more at the order of which this is developed.
Oh, the housing's all in.
Housing,
right?
boom, you designated housing, and there's the housing. The interchange zone actually has quite a bit going on, as does the overlay. But the rest of it is kind of raw land. I mean, even though there's intents or efforts underway, by and large, it's empty.
Yeah, so the good news is with what's been happening with the Evermore development is that's all under control of one owner. That's a good thing for us. 40 acres. We have the Smith property along North County Boulevard, which I think is for sale for a price. When we talked with Stan, I think someday he would like to develop that, but right now, I think what he asked for, I think most developers have told us is more than what they're willing to pay for the land. And so when that's gonna go will be kind of interesting in regards to when that develops. This right here is Dennis Baker's property. And as far as we know, there's not necessarily any plans other than right there is the future McDonald's, which has been approved 2.5 years ago that they still haven't built.
They're closing 700 corporate stores.
Yeah, it's interesting. So
McDonald's are?
yeah, and so they
700.
700 corporate stores nationwide,
700.
just in the US.
We got through this vision.
I don't know if they're even revamping it.
No, they're closing.
They're closing.
No, I mean, the existing stays, they're totally.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The ones that
Wow, I
are,
didn't
that
know
they're
that.
continuing to own.
Doesn't Baker's own right here too?
yeah, so this property St. John's had under contract. They were going to develop it as part of their development. St. John's ultimately decided not to close on that property. And now we met with Dennis Baker on Friday and I said, what's your plans? And he's working with Brandon Fugel, and he's sounding like he might develop it himself. Now, if a developer came along that is gonna pay them money for the land that made sense to Dennis, then they're gonna do that, is what they told us. Or they're working on it, a retail anchor right now, and I don't know where where the anchor would be located, but they have one that they're trying to attract to, kick off the development there. But they made it sound like if they get that retail anchor, that Dennis, working with Coldwell Banker and Brandon Fugel's people, they would develop that property themselves.
Are they gonna have the same hangups that St. John's had though, where
LDS Church.
Well, so my understanding is there was a, when Dennis, when Dennis originally bought this property, the eldest church had, I don't know, we just call it a covenant within with buying that.
Side agreement.
They
Side
owned,
agreement.
they owned a square of property that was closer to the boulevard in the middle of what he bought. And he exchanged that for pad site rights, too, I believe. And now that covenant seems to have interfered with the St. John's desire of development, or at least it was brought up as a discussion.
Yeah, St. John's, I don't think that was the reason that St. John's ended up not doing it, but, because I talked with, a PRI who was working with Dennis to get that covenant. In essence, Dennis has to buy out the church and say, we want to buy out this covenant so it doesn't exist. And it sounded like they were making progress on that. I don't know if they've actually got that resolved, but if Dennis ends up developing that, then, I mean, that's he created the issue, then it's his issue to do.
So with that, does the council see a need to adjust what's there? We've had the comments about decreasing the mixed housing and increasing the commercial sales and creating open space somewhere around 3 to 5 acres of a leisure type park. But other than that, is there anything underlying here with the basic zoning that there's a concern about?
I tend to agree with Cindy. I think maybe we talked to Mr. Buckner about, or talked about that section. I think, Mr. Perry, I think his is a little more landlocked, it's a little more difficult.
And to chime in on that one, and I think contrary to some comments that we don't listen, the number one thing that I hear across the board is that they don't want any more mixed housing. High density.
So we have 5 number 1 priorities.
Let's keep adding them.
As long as there's good roads in it.
Those are where the best roads are.
I'm just saying that is probably the thing I hear the most, even more than roads. Please no more mixed high density housing. So I'm relaying that.
Any comments, council?
I've got a question just broadly. This discussion item on the agenda, was it precipitated by council concern, public concern?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to understand what originated the discussion.
I asked Scott to review the zoning in that area to see what was left for high density mixed housing. To me, this is the future. This is it. Once it's gone, it's gone. So, I mean, and first I want a part. I want every square inch to be sales tax revenue. Now, whether or not it's gonna happen, I don't know. But I have yet to come across a resident that says I want more high density housing. They don't. I think we put our limit. I asked Ken at the end of last year to give me a percentage. Now, Ken, I don't know if this was specific to the Grove or just the entire city, because we do have some density housing, over by Water Garden and whatnot. But we were at about 37% multifamily to existing single family, 63%.
That's citywide.
Citywide. I just think we've hit the limit. There's no benefit at this point with what we already have to the residents. We're paying into the tax base, and is there better facilities and a better quality of city that we can provide with where we're heading with the high density homes. And every time one goes up, the comments start coming in.
Sure. So given that,
Mhm.
right, because I think we've all heard that,
Mhm.
is there any underlying structural problems with what the zoning is current? Other than this adjusting mixed housing and commercial sales relative to the one area there that's been pointed out.
I mean, there's really not more we can do though, right?
Well, so I think the question is,
Right there.
Well, there's
is this
that.
property, is this something the council's gonna wanna have themselves? Or are we okay with that little bit left being developed as a mixed housing in conjunction with?
And that was the potential 100 units, or what was the potential on that? Do you remember?
It's approximately 11, excuse me, 11 acres, 12 acres, 12 units in the acre max. I'm sorry. Having a frog in my throat here, sorry. As we've seen tonight, and as I've mentioned, as we've looked at the current requirements to achieve, thank you, to achieve 12 units acres is very difficult, if not impossible, with our current requirements.
But
So
they did it.
with that, we're talking most likely, let's say 9 units the acre would be a reasonable, or perhaps 10. So 10 will run, so it's 110 potential units approximately on that property.
So what are we obligated though, Tina, because isn't that already,
You're only obligated if there's a completed application, development application submitted, and all fees are paid.
and that is not the case on this property?
It was once approved
It
with a site
expired.
plan, but it expired.
Okay, so basically, we can change the zoning.
There's no one vested currently in the zoning on that piece.
Now, zone changes require public notice, public hearing, et cetera, right? And particularly for the landowners affected, 300 feet? Or is it
Yeah, no,
larger than that?
Was it 300 feet?
300 feet notice.
Yeah.
Okay.
They get personal notice, I think, within 300 feet, and then signs are put on the property as well.
Totally off the subject on signs. Who takes them down? I see them up for months after.
That should be our city, either our building inspectors or our city planner.
Just a quick
Yeah,
comment.
that's a good
I do
question.
see them there. That's been there for,
City
So at the moment, I mean, just to kind of stick with this subject,
right.
I do hear a question about whether this parcel here should be rezoned, moved out of mixed housing and put into commercial sales. In order to do that, we would need to publicly notice it, but more specifically, we would need to have a discussion with Mr. Proctor.
Yes.
Make sure that he's not opposed to that particular zone being imposed there.
I prefer we do that before he receives a notice. in the
Okay.
Definitely.
Then
And I would
we-
say that to any landowner,
Yeah.
actually.
then we have not identified it, but we're saying somewhere in this area, we need to be looking at some public use park space. And then there's a question, and I'm not sure yet what the question is about this parcel here. But I do have one about here. How far back does the Walmart project go on that parcel?
So,
Too far south.
right there is the road that goes through it. So this is all of that, part of that project. This is the Walmart right here. These are the apartments, these are the townhomes. And I think there's a little bit on that side of the road.
So this is already under construction here?
Yeah.
Those are almost all done.
No, okay, and then this Walmart is up and running,
Uh-huh.
and then we see activity along the frontage here.
We have the retail strip mall, and then there's a little office.
Okay,
It's
so
facing
this
it.
project here is underway, the ship has sailed, it's,
That's where the
It's
shoot,
moving.
that's where the shooting was.
okay. Okay, thanks for that. As far as the rest of this here, and down around here, well, except for the bank and Technoglass, et cetera.
Well, this is all right down there, right here.
I'm sorry, right here,
Yeah.
over here, except for this here, and down around this area where we now have car sales, and all through here, and then up here. I can't remember exactly, is this Christensen Trucks?
Yep,
Okay,
that's developed.
and is there a house right there, or no?
The house is right there.
Well, right here,
Yeah,
okay.
it's right on the corner.
So with the exception of this parcel here, there's really nothing else left to discuss, is that right?
Well, unless the council wants to make changes.
That's what I'm asking.
I don't know if there's anything we can discuss.
Anybody? No, not really? Okay. So let's talk about this one because we're already talking about this one. So let's talk about what are the rules here and what are the issues that we're dealing with?
Well, the rules are 12 units per acre maximum for this.
Okay.
The frontage needs to be office or retail.
Okay.
Initially, when this was put together as a project, it was going to be frontage, office, retail, and on the back was housing. That project's got away. So there's no vesting in that. The issue is, do we want to change this and rezone it to commercial sales? Or, well, I mean, commercial sales, I think would be the only thing that makes sense for us to rezone it to. But again, how's that going to affect the developer who is here and can kind of answer what he would probably like to see happen? And just, really for the council to say, if we're done with high density housing, then that probably needs to be rezoned to commercial sales.
Okay. Would you like to say some things? Please
Sure.
come up and state your name and address.
Sure. Hello, Greg Perry. I'm a resident of Provo. I represent Shotgun Creek Investments that owns that property there on State Street and 1300 or Proctor Lane. Appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak here. I know that you're make a lot of important decisions here regarding the future of Pleasant Grove. Just to give us a little history, we've owned this property, I think about 4 years now. It's been kind of a long ride as we've bought it during the downturn after Copperleaf went by the wayside. During this time, we've been seeking for that, for the ability to develop. I mean, we wouldn't want to develop. We'd love to see Pleasant Grove grow and become the dynamic, beautiful city that we all seek it to be. The Walmart coming in next door was a positive sign for us, certainly, and that creating that anchor tenant next door was, a good thing. It's been a little bit disappointing to see some of the retail pads in front of the Walmart that have kind of struggled to get filled, and is not a great sign for us trying to seek, a similar type of anchor tenant for our property. However, so that's really been what we've been working on during this time. I admit we haven't been entirely focused on this property, but we've been keeping our feelers out, trying to attract that anchor tenant that we could really build around. The Walmart Neighborhood Market or similar sized tenant. We've had in recent times throughout the past few years, other developers come along and say, hey, would you be willing to part with the mixed housing portion back acreage of your property, and you keep the retail and we keep the housing and we build the housing? And we've kind of put them off, saying, we don't really think that's a good plan. This is a 22-acre parcel. It needs to be planned together. If there's a retail component up front, which there certainly will be, or rather I should say, if there's a housing component in the back, it needs to be master planned together with the retail component for it to work and make sense and be something that the city loves, that the developer can, find is an efficient, profitable development. So the housing part of it, is the easier part. I will say though, however, the mixed housing regulations that have been imposed on that area do make housing difficult. This goes back to the larger issue that I know everyone is faced with your constituents who come along and say, hey, no more mixed housing or no more multifamily high density. I think that, personally, I think that is sort of one of those things that it's sort of like voters also come along to you and say, hey, we want no taxes. We also want really high services. It's kind of one of those things that aren't necessarily always compatible to have, a very suburban single family type community, but then also have tons of retail and, we can't attract the type of retail tenants here without a population base and a certain level of density that is required. It's also interesting to me because we have, Shotgun Creek has developments in other states throughout the West. Most communities and most areas are going the complete opposite direction of Pleasant Grove and increasing density. And they're doing so in a smart manner. They're trying to construct walkable, workable communities. They're pedestrian friendly. But density is viewed as an asset because people are an asset. And this goes to really what the future of Pleasant Grove wants to be. If it wants to be a very quiet, suburban, single-family community with that you can, walk around and barely see a car drive by on a street, then it certainly can go that direction. If it wants to be a dynamic, growing community that attracts high-quality employers and high-quality retail tenants, density is required. It is the kind of thing that provides that dynamic city-like feeling that attracts employers and retail tenants. I would suggest just, in my mind, this whole area south of State Street should embrace multifamily and not shy away from it, simply because it will create the type of dynamic city, urban-like feeling that attracts those types of tenants. Now, I know you're probably not going to go that direction. Right now, we're talking about the opposite direction of eliminating housing altogether. And you can certainly, you could go that direction as well. In regards to our property, if the housing component were to be eliminated, it would devalue our property. It's certainly the housing component is really kind of necessary to master plan and to make a profitable development. As we've seen with the past developer that tried to do, the housing component was important to that. So what would happen if the housing component were taken away is you'd have to do retail on the entire acreage. It's 22 acres we have. That's a lot of retail. There aren't a lot of big boxes going up. I mean, and don't get me wrong, we would love to do all retail. If anyone knows, a big box or a big, another doTERRA that wants to come along and put it on our property, sold. We would love to do that. We have no bias here, but to be forced to do all retail on that acreage makes us sit back and take a breath and say, okay, well, now we have to find a really enormous big tenant that's going to take all this acreage. That's going to take a long time to do. So if you would like to see that acreage developed there on State Street, which I would, it's not earning any sales tax revenue and not really doing anything now. The multifamily or a housing component of it certainly makes that easier. When we do find that retail anchor tenant, such as a sort of a mid-box size, similar to a Walmart that we can build around. And my vision for the property is some type of mid-box size tenant with some quality restaurants on the retail frontage with quality residential component in the rear part of it. That is something that could happen a lot sooner. Rezoning and taking away the housing component of that makes it difficult. So that's really what I've had to say. All I have to say about that. We have you can go to our website shotguncreek.com and see some of the other communities we've done. I can leave some of my cards with you. Just recently in Richland, Washington, we built a 160-unit multifamily apartment complex. It's the highest quality residential apartment complex in the city of Richland, Washington, which is actually a similar sized city as Pleasant Grove. It's 48,000, you have 33,000. So we built the highest quality residential complex in that city. It's charging the highest rents in that city. It's also attracting a high quality tenant and making the quality of life for the area that is around it. It's been great. So there's not just in zoning, you also have a lot of tools as a city council to make sure that the products that go in there are a quality product that create the type of environment that you're looking for. So you have some flexibility and tools beyond the heavy hand of zoning, which is a heavy hand. I would, argue that just, you're designating this as mixed housing and getting rid of multifamily has set back retail development in the area. So that's certainly something that reasonable minds can just disagree on. Does anyone have any questions for us?
Company Shotgun what?
Shotgun Creek development or Shotgun Creek investments, and our website is shotguncreek.com.
I don't know that there's anything controversial about what you're saying. I think that we've had many education sessions with developers who have explained to us the necessity for rooftops or bodies in order to bring in retail development. I think you can see that the rooftops are coming and the retail development is not. And for us to change the zoning in the favor of rooftops, it would certainly fill up with rooftops. And then there would be nothing left for the commercial sales. So this is rather a dilemma.
It is.
For our city.
Mm-hmm.
Our people have made it quite clear on the subject of multifamily housing. They're done. I don't think there's very many people that within the city that are, mad at us for not increasing, high density housing. So at the best that we could do right now as a council would be to leave that particular piece alone as opposed to rezone it one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, thank you for your input. Does anybody else have comments for Mr. Perry?
Appreciate you being here and sitting through the meeting and sharing your insights. We're grateful to have developers looking at Pleasant Grove and trying to make it work and figuring it out. So
Right. And I would expect that. I mean, as a resident, there's no benefit to me as, if I own a home in this, there's no benefit to me necessarily right away if a multifamily project comes in. So residents, I think, are always going to lean that direction. And so I would expect that to continue. It's difficult for the residents to see a broader vision of a community and what the benefits of density can bring. And I'm not even here to, this is sort of a philosophical argument right now, because obviously you're not considering changing the density of the other direction. However, it does have an effect. And as I said, communities across the nation are going the other direction in terms of density and trying to eliminate single family and bring more density, because that eliminates sprawl. It's viewed as being more environmentally friendly, more units per acre, less acreage, and then perhaps leaving more green space, and then increasing on the property that is built on being more dense. So in terms of a city planning direction, the rest of the country basically is going the other direction. But that's an argument for another day.
Map,
Yeah.
and you paint it blue or red. This is the deepest red you can possibly get right here.
I appreciate that.
The likelihood of us putting a small blue dot on it is not really gonna happen.
And I understand that.
Thank you. All right. Thank you for your
Okay.
time.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. So is anyone on the council recommending at this point that we revisit the zoning up here in this area? Are we
Does that mean
recommending
revisit it as what it was
making a
and
change,
intended to be?
changing
or-
it from what it is today to something else?
So right now it's that the front part of it is
This is
commercial,
currently commercial sales,
and then
and
that
this is commercial.
triangle is
Right.
12
Mixed.
units per acre.
Mixed
And
house.
that's what it's been for quite some
Right, so is anyone interested in making a change on that?
Do you have a recommendation?
No, I don't. I think we should leave it the same as it is. What about this parcel here?
I would like-
Or not parcel, but this area? Are we interested in that moving into a different direction?
Let's have a conversation with Ray.
Okay, so staff, can you please have a conversation with Mr. Proctor and also, is this the Smiths here?
Mrs. Smith's there, yes.
Maybe a conversation with the Smiths?
There might be two different property owners, but we'll get that sorted out. We have a couple issues with Ray we've got to get resolved before we start talking about his land. So what I'm saying is, we're not gonna have this ready for rezone in a couple of weeks. We're gonna need a little time. to kind of-
I don't see anybody beating the
Okay,
door
that's
down.
good. I just wanna make sure
to
that
develop that
expectation is
property.
clear.
And I don't see Ray coming and asking for permits.
Okay.
And it would
So-
be well to have that resolved prior to.
That's what I'm saying. We gotta get that stuff resolved before we even talk about
Yeah.
his property, so. And we're making a lot of headway. John Goodman's done a heck of a job on getting a lot of that taken care of, but we're not quite there yet. Just
I
so
was
we
wondering
gotta
that.
do that first.
So having had the discussion, council, is it fair to say that we've reviewed the area and the uses? We have some suggested minor tweaks that we'd like to make, but by and large, we like the way that this is set up, and we're going to continue patience in waiting on sales and commercial development to come in and as it's been zoned. Is that a good summary for everyone?
Can I just add a comment? The patience to me is a key word, because this area could already be developed if the council didn't have a vision 10 years ago. I mean, this could be all 100% office today, right here, if we wouldn't have changed the zoning on that. So part of it is, I think our elected officials have set a vision, controlled the zoning. It has slowed down the growth, but the payoff, I think, is going to be in the long run when we get the proper development. We could have fast food restaurants already lined up along there, I think. So I think sometimes in the community, people look at that and they don't see activity. And part of it is just kind of this patience word that it will come. It might not come as quickly as we like, but if we're going to hold out for certain aspects of development, then it might take a little longer than what we had hoped.
Okay, any other comments on this item?
Thank you, Scott.
So in conjunction kind of with Scott's point is I think one of my broad philosophical ideas too is to not mess with it that often. If we've got a vision and a plan and we need some patience, let's not continue to erode the master planning in hopes of seeing the retail come sooner when we might be making the retail come later by some of the changes that we're proposing. So
You want to take this
So
down?
we open it up to comment.
Yeah, we've been open for a long time.
Jennifer Bautista, 32 North, 1300 East. I talked to Dagan and Ken over the software that or the presentation, I think it was back late 2013, where we had presenters come in and build out our Grove area and give us a population and a sales tax base. I was under the understanding that we had access to that to plug things in and out to make those adjustments. And since we're talking about doing away with multi-housing, which was probably part of that scenario, I would like to know the difference in the population changes that we're making, also in the retail sales changes that we're making, especially when we're trying to determine what the need is for our public safety building. If we are reducing our population, that changes that scenario as well. So I just think that that should be information we should be getting. And if we paid for it and we still have access to that, I think we should be using it. And I haven't gotten information or confirmation that we still have access to that. I was,
Access to report.
no, to the actual software. The presentation that, when I was there, my impression was that we would have access to plug things in before we make decisions.
This is the $4 million.
I don't remember. It was
If everything was built out.
right. But the company that we hired that came in, the presentation they gave was that we would have access to that. So anytime we did a zone change, we would be able to plug those zone changes in prior to making the decision. So we would see the outcome of that decision before it's made. And I can't get an answer on whether or not that, if it's a software that we have, if it's a membership that we have to go through them to do. But I'd be really interested in somebody checking into that and seeing what those changes and all the changes that we've made so far, because we have made several changes on zonings out in the Grove that has changed the scenario, and it was a max build out, and we have changed that. So I think an update on those numbers would be very helpful.
I'm not sure, do we have access to software?
So it's not a software, they just built a financial model, I think through spreadsheets, saying if the property develops in this manner, this is the estimated sales tax revenue, this is the estimated property tax revenue, this is the, I don't remember it addressing population, but it might have done.
It did.
So there's a model that's been created, and we're meeting with Louis Young next week on another issue, and we can revisit that, I think, and say, hey, if we do change the zoning here, will you rerun the numbers and see how it affects that? I don't.
Did we just pay for a report, or do we pay for access to their program?
I don't know the answer to that.
I don't think it was an editable program.
Well, that's the way the presentation
And I
was
can-
presented to me, is that it was something that we would have access to and be able to use.
I think it was them that had the software, and they
Would be able to use, or the staff.
So like I said.
Well,
it's-
either or.
If Dean's not here, he could have that answer, but that is, yeah, it was a financial model, it's not a software, it's an Excel spreadsheet, I'm guessing, that they could, I think, go in and just replug in the numbers.
The presentation said that we could use it anytime we wanted to, as we went through our zoning process and rezoning.
Yeah.
And we could plug it in, and they would recalculate the numbers and give us an instant answer to how our zoning was changing. So to me, that's either a software or an access to some kind of network or something, but maybe, that's my interpretation
So
of the
we'll go
presentation.
ahead and
Yeah,
when
we'll
they
follow
meet
up
with
on that.
Louis Young, they'll bring that up and find out.
Yeah, we'll follow up on that.
And the other thing is, since we're doing the vision and the zoning, because of the issue that was here earlier, are we entertaining changing the design for the Grove area, the design districts?
What do you mean?
You mean the mountain?
Yeah, the mountain and the
Yeah,
and the thing, because being on planning commission, I'd like to know at least if we're entertaining that.
It sounds like Ken was saying
We're gonna visit
at
it.
this point that needs to be revisited.
Well, isn't that what we're doing, is discussing the zone?
No,
the district?
those are the design.
Okay, well,
We're just discussing the zones.
well, it just said zones and vision, so I didn't know if the design was part of the vision.
Districts, right?
Yeah, the design districts.
At a very high level, we're looking at commercial sales, mixed housing, interchange, and just revisiting the vision of the Grove area and trying to determine, does it need to be adjusted or are we okay with it? And so far tonight, we've come up with two potential changes. But one requires discussion and other resolutions with the property owner before we can do anything with that.
Right. Well, I was curious because the developer, asked for a waiver, and you guys were saying that you might had to have a discussion. And since we're having a discussion, I was just curious if you guys are actually entertaining the possibility of changing those. It can come up in planning, yeah. I'm trying to preempt something that might come up, ahead of us. If you're leaning that way, then it will, change the discussion we would have in planning commission about what the future of those designs would be.
Yeah, I think tonight the answer to that question was Ken intimated several times that what we currently have for mountain and garden may no longer be applicable because things have blurred. So I would take that to mean Ken's gonna raise that question. It'll probably go to planning commission and then make its way back.
So planning commission will we'll discuss it first?
Yes.
I'm trying
Okay.
to, leave that up to Ken.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks. Anyone else on item 11A? Molly?
I just want to address him, just as a resident of Pleasant Grove. I had the opportunity to go on a ride along on Saturday night. The majority of our time was spent, and this is only one night of one shift, but the majority of our time was spent Strawberry Point and the high density housing down around Walmart and those areas. So I'd be curious to ask Chief Smith, what percentage of incidents are around there? Because we didn't spend hardly any time east and
Yeah.
north.
Chief Smith's not here, but there's
Yeah,
no
he's
question
not.
that we have a disproportionate amount of our resources spent in the high.
Yeah.
Officer Nelson at one time was compiling a report, so we could ask him maybe to finish that.
I think it has been defined. We just need to pull that back up.
We can get that back in front of us. I think periodically, just like the fire department, we've had a map that shows us numbers of incidents
And where
and
the-
where they are.
I think we had that during public safety building discussion.
Right, so I'm sure that we can get that reproduced. It's good information.
Yeah, I
But-
think
But to your point, the reality is the higher the concentration.
the
of
more
people,
things are gonna
the
happen.
more activities you're going to
Yes.
have in that area.
Yeah.
And if it's police, it's going to be police work. If it's fire.
And I don't want to stereotype.
Pardon me?
I don't want to stereotype the residents or
No,
anybody that lives there,
population-wise,
but
right?
population, absolutely. You run the higher risk.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we're gonna finish on item 11A. Let's move to the agenda for May 26th. All right. The items that are on here right now, we're down on 9A to consider for adoption of resolution 2015-016, authorizing the mayor to sign a professional services agreement with Bowen Collins and Associates for the purpose of providing structural and life safety evaluation on 4 buildings owned by Pleasant Grove City and providing for an effective date. I think you know what that is.
Yeah, so we've been,
I was just gonna tell
yeah,
you.
go ahead.
So we just finalized the notice of awarded bid, the RFP that the council made the decision last time. What you'll see is the agreement, which covers mostly liability and insurance issues. You'll see the same proposal that you saw in the bid packet in terms of what their services are going to cover, and the price is the same. And then you'll also see a modified schedule. The original schedule that was included in the RFP packet had actual dates, but they had the kickoff meeting starting on May 4th, which obviously we didn't make the decision till last week. So instead of actual dates, they have timeframes. So 1 week from the time we tell them we're ready to go, they'll have a kickoff meeting. 3 weeks later, they'll have a different kind of a meeting. So, but the time frame of the 6 weeks promise that was in the RFP is still in there. It's just by the week rather than the specific date.
That's good.
Okay?
Any
And
questions?
they've already signed it and sent it back to us.
I was gonna
today.
ask him, do they know?
Yeah, I've been working with Mr. Cohen, and he sent me back their signed copy this afternoon, and Kathy has it, so it's ready to go.
Any
What's the
questions?
Bowen's first name?
There's a Bowen that.
He lives in
Creekside.
Larry.
Is it Larry?
So is it Larry?
Larry Bowen.
Yeah. All right, item 9B, consider for approval, a 2-lot subdivision called Creekside North Plat A, located at approximately 42 west, 3300 north in the RR zone.
Okay, we have 2 plats that are related to each other, and I don't unfortunately have the most recent one up on the screen right now, but this is very similar to what you will see next week. So we have Creekside development on 3300 north next to the Manila Creek Pond area, which would be down in this area. The Aspen Grove, or what is it? Creekside at Aspen Grove is the name of the development that's down in this area here. This is an addition to that, to have 2 lots that will be added to that subdivision. There's an existing home, they'd like to build another. Yeah. So that's basically what it is. There's a planned easement for a roadway that will go through here for future development or subdivision of this property right here. So it's a 2-lot subdivision.
Okay, any questions? Okay.
The next one is an amendment to the Creekside plat, which we just looked at this area up here. So this is just something that's been worked on for quite some time now to readjust the boundaries on several properties in this development. There were some problems between property boundaries. So this is just cleaning that up.
What kind of problems?
Oh, don't go there.
So
Homes built over property lines.
property lines were like where we see it's dark, they were completely wrong. So they all got fixed. Okay.
Yeah, it's a long process that's
Scott, can I
led
ask
to
you a
this.
quick question? Did you chat with Aguilar?
You know, I sent her a text and an email, and did not hear back from her.
Okay.
So
You
I probably
follow up?
I probably just need to follow up.
Okay.
Okay, the next one is, it came forward to the planning commission as the Lightyear subdivision just off of 300 East, right next to the Grove Crest Elementary School. The name has changed to Cassia Estates, so it's just taking this property here, dividing it into,
Buzz.
but yeah, Buzzland. So it's a simple division of a large lot.
Where is this one?
300 East right here,
Yes.
Grove Crest Elementary School, right?
Junior high.
Junior high, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Junior high school's at the Grove Crest.
So it's the property on the north side of that east entrance.
Is that the
By the old seminary.
east entrance right there?
Yeah, that's the entrance
Sorry, like,
into the junior high
That's
school.
south side. is the property.
That'd be nice.
Very good. Okay. Ken, item E,
That's it.
you're done. Tina. 2015-19.
The election laws.
Oh, actually, it's Kathy's thing, but
No, it's yours.
I'll be
No, it's-
presenting. So there were some minor changes that the state made in some of the election laws, and we're just changing our local ordinance to mirror those changes. And she has them almost ready to go.
Okay.
They're nothing,
This have to do with political signs and where they could go and
yeah, and timeframes and that kind of a thing. They're not. You're trying to remember?
They were a big deal.
Yeah.
yeah, it turned out to be a big deal. I think that's what it's about. So
Yeah,
if we
it's
can
not.
get
The thing is that most of the changes were made in the state code, and our local election code actually is very brief. We just follow the state, so we don't need to make a lot of changes. There were just a couple little tweaks in our ordinance that we need to make to comply with the new laws.
Actually, most of it was financial
Yeah, the
disclosures.
financial disclosures.
any questions? Okay. Item F, Resolution 2015-018, authorizing the mayor to sign an interlocal cooperative agreement between Utah County and Pleasant Grove City for the administration of the 2015 municipal elections.
That's, we agreed, I think the council approved that we would turn over the actual administration of the upcoming elections to the county.
Okay.
And so they require an agreement that spells out what they're going to do and what we're still responsible for, and also the pricing. And so they've got a list and it's broken down pretty individually, so you can see exactly what each service that they're gonna provide costs. And I believe it's in the same number as what was brought forward as an estimate.
And the main reason for that was to go to the electronic ballot, is that right?
Yes, yes.
Any other questions? Okay. Item G, consider for adoption resolution 2015-019, accepting the municipal wastewater planning program self-assessment report for 2015 calendar year and providing for an effective date. Right? I know that you're supposed to tell us what it is.
He's working on it.
It's the same one that we sign every year. If they just want to know, how many more we have in the population, and how many employees do we have, and the prices that we keep trying to put back into the sewer to maintain it and everything. So, okay.
And
it's
who's
just-
certified, and is this the one that says how many people
Yeah,
are certified?
yeah. So, and they have us do it every year. So it's just kind of an update, I guess, each year. So.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Molly? Okay. Item 10A is, these are public discussion items, public hearing to receive comments on the proposed Pleasant Grove City fiscal year 2015-16 budget. The final budget includes the fee schedule and Pleasant Grove redevelopment agency budget.
So we've been working on the budget for the last few months, and it is now, we adopted our tentative budget a couple weeks ago. This is our public hearing on the budget, and then we have it on our agenda, the second meeting in June to adopt. Is that right, Kathy? So we do have a public hearing associated with that. That's next week.
It says that it's available at the city office. Is it also available online?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Dean has it all online, so people can pull that down and take a look at it. Now, because of that, we were going, and this is a little bit off topic, but we were going to have a meeting on the third Tuesday to adopt the budget, but we bumped it up a week. And so that third Tuesday is Strawberry Days and the concert in the park. So we were hoping that we could just cancel that meeting and be sure we could attend those festivities. So we moved it up a week just to accommodate that.
Do we have in our agenda somewhere to cancel that meeting? Or?
Not yet, but we'll
Okay.
we'll get it on there.
It was in the year schedule. It was approved.
At the beginning of the year.
And we
It
were
was already adopted not to have one. Okay. Even better. Okay, item 11A, items for discussion, no action. The follow-up discussion on moving public works to the pipe plant.
So we've done some research on just some basic numbers on what it would cost and how we could finance a plan to get public works moved out to the pipe plant. So we're going to present that in a general form for discussion. We don't necessarily need to say, okay, we're going to start funding this now and get this done. But if the city council can give us a direction that we're okay with public works moving out there, we have a storm drain facility we need to build that costs a couple $100,000. But we want to build it wherever our future public works site is going to be. So that's what's kind of driving this discussion. So you'll see the information. We'll talk about it next week, and that's something we can discuss over the next couple of weeks. But eventually we want to get to a point to say we're comfortable with public works going out there so we can start building this one facility.
Great. Any questions or discussion?
I have one. I guess I'm not seeing anywhere on this agenda, or in today's agenda, but we talked last week about the possibility of seating our committee to talk about public safety in the next week or two, which would be today's agenda or this agenda. And it might be of relevant interest to those members of that city committee to talk about that possibility too, at least be involved on some level in that discussion. So, just because the pipe plant was floated as a possible location of public safety.
Right. So when it comes to that committee, we've left that up to the elected officials on how fast and when you want to move with it. So we don't put that on the agenda or whatever. So if you guys want it on next week, we can discuss it next week. But we've kind of left that in your hands.
I don't want to put more work on the mayor's plate because he has to do the preliminary interviews, but if there's a possibility it could be on next week's agenda, I would not be averse to seeing it there.
How many people now? What are we up to? 30?
Something,
It grows. Yeah. We've allowed it to grow because people are showing interest.
Yeah.
A lot of people are showing interest, so.
One thing, so I did notice it went out on the city bill, and have we closed it yet? Okay.
We did and we didn't.
Well,
There was a date,
Yes and no.
but we're still accepting.
We've taken it
As
off the
they're coming.
website. You can't access on the website if you want to sign up.
When did we get that bill? Because I opened mine now late, I know it, but.
About the 5th or 6th.
Okay.
Yeah, the bill came out a little bit late, I think, than normal, but we, like I said, we kept it up for an additional week online.
All right.
So that people could do it, but I think we removed it just a little bit ago.
That's a lot of interviewing.
Okay.
No comment.
Nope. Thank you. All right, so I think that's everything for next week's agenda. Okay, coming back to tonight's agenda. All right, we're up to neighborhood and staff business. I think Libby left tonight.
She wasn't here? Yeah, she left her for the meeting.
Yeah, right as we started, I said goodbye to her on the way out the door, so anyway. Okay, let's come over here. Let's start with Dayton.
Just so earlier as we were kind of wandering towards secondary water and what we can do to encourage, saw a presentation Friday from the Weber Basin Conservancy District, who has started implementing meters And they found a very effective tool, doing something similar to what Rocky Mountain Power's been doing with each of us recently, which is simply reporting whether or not a user was using more or less than their neighbors. And that actually had a big impact on usage. However, to do that type of system, you still need to be able to track what an individual is using. But it was interesting to see. The whole conference morning was kind of discussing various aspects of our water situation, and water law, and things to worry about, and where things are headed. As Scott noted, statewide, really tracking what we're doing with water, being efficient with it is much the focus for everyone.
Anything else, Dana? Okay, thank you. Tina?
Just to follow up on the question that you raised a week or so ago about regulating the drones.
Yeah.
So the field has been preempted by the federal government for the most part. Basically, the only thing that we could regulate would be or enforce is if they violate our nuisance law or public privacy laws. So for example, if they're noisy and they buzz outside your windows, or they're looking in your windows or whatever, then we could do something about it. But any other regulations would preempt them.
So not if we're wearing our gardening outfit.
Yes.
Just have to throw that.
Just trying to fly under the radar.
Okay.
Anywhere but outside in your garden.
Okay.
I think your discussion was strawberry days, like the
My
parade.
concern was strawberry days, right? We have asked the one person that's inquired to contact Melissa Finch and become approved, if you will, because she needs that kind of service. But other than that, we don't know what else is going to happen.
What
Thank you.
are they gonna do with the drone for strawberry day? Just
Whatever she wants them to do,
Video.
film the parade, whatever. Yeah, I don't know.
So could it be like a conditional use permit that, or a special
it would
event permit?
it would probably be more of a permit, yeah, like a special event.
I think I just want it for promotional material for next year on the
Right.
website and things like that, the carnival, and I didn't hear parade, but I heard at carnival, possibly rodeo, kind of things like that, promotional material.
Anything else, Tina? Okay, Scott?
Just a couple of calendaring tomorrow. We're interviewing for Public Works Director. That's from 1 to 6, roughly. But we're starting for sure at 1 when we end.
Okay.
And then Thursday night is the reception put on by Ken Brett Schneider and his group on this new project that they're looking to put in Pleasant Grove. So that's at 6 o'clock at their warehouse in Linden. I believe we've sent you the address for that, but they have a unique thing and they're going to show it off. So.
Everybody still available for tomorrow's interviews?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. All right, Sherry.
I talked to you before about the Pleasant Grove review and how I got a grant for that. And there's a man who said he was willing to match whatever I could raise. So I applied for another grant and asked for the grant for $13,000 and got it. And so then I contacted him and he gulped and said, I didn't know you'd be this efficient at this job. And I can't quite afford 13,000 right now, but I'll give you 10. So I said, okay, we'll take 10.
Fantastic.
And that should get us really close to getting the whole thing complete.
Wonderful.
Oh my
Wonderful.
Good job. Thank you.
Awesome.
Anything else, Sherry?
Nancy went really well.
Was there a good turnout?
Yeah, really good.
Good.
Thank you. Memorial Day program?
Oh, yeah, that's not it. Yes, we do have a Memorial Day program Monday at 9 a.m. And Mark Besant will be speaking.
9 a.m.?
Yeah, I think I told you the wrong.
Mark?
The one here in Pleasant Grove, yes. And the mayor will make some comments and we'll have.
I'm singing.
And
Awesome.
Sid is singing a solo. And we do have Miss Pleasant Grove coming out. It should be a nice program.
Who's laughing? I think that's wonderful.
Mike, have you heard me sing? Please.
Yes, I did.
It's
Wasn't that you screeching it out?
Absolutely.
Very good. Thank you.
Cool.
Dave?
Thanks for your support, Mayor and council and staff and really everyone that came to the breakfast the other day. We had a little over 800 people come and visit us that day. And even though it's kind of a fundraiser for us, I think the most important part of it is the fact that we get to meet with our neighbors and get to know them again, get to chat with them and stuff. So it was really fun to have everybody here.
I like this, Sarah. It's good.
It's great.
Anything else, Dave? Okay, thanks. Greg?
I'm just grateful for the rain. It's making my life a little easier, so.
That's good.
If we can talk everybody into cutting back, that'd be nice, but trying to do that's kind of like finding a needle in a haystack.
Well, Molly shamed me into turning my sprinklers off.
I did not public shame.
But I did turn them
And
off.
she wasn't gonna say anything.
I didn't name any names or take any pictures,
Didn't
so.
want to, I shut them off.
Yeah,
Anything else?
that's been kind of a thought is, I know there's some other places that are actually taking pictures of people that are watering during the rain, different things, and putting them on their website, but. You know, just hopefully with education and just keep talking to them, we can get them to understand that, you know, water's not that abundant, nice, but it's not unlimited, so. We only have so much and that's all we get to use, right? So hopefully we just keep with the education going and kind of help with that, so.
Thanks, Greg. Yo? Nothing? You sure?
I like the rain too, but it's a double-edged sword with us. It's hard
Yeah.
to play baseball, it's hard to landscape, it's hard to mow lawns. We'll take any rain we can get.
How's the concession stand bathroom going?
Roof's on, I think doors went in today,
Oh,
so they'll start interior work this week.
you gonna make it?
Oh, yeah. Never doubt.
He says with
I love
confidence.
that.
Yeah, it's always,
Never doubt.
it's always with confidence.
Oh, yeah.
Ken?
Nothing else.
Thank you. Kathy? Eric?
Yes.
Yeah.
Strawberry Days, we just discussed it. The book is going to be printed soon. If you want to come up and take a look at it, the mayor has a great picture in here. So
That's
I
it.
encourage you to take a look at it.
And you
And a great message.
That's the old,
picture.
oh, that
It is
doesn't
old.
even look like me.
So anyway, if you want to take a look at it, the last modifications we made tonight by Calvin and then Preston.
I'm still making changes.
Okay. We'll let her slide.
Congratulations. That's a good job. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. Diana?
Yes, I do have a couple of things. First of all, I do want to shout out to Public Works. So with all the, I think, what are we, 3 inches of rain in the last month and a half, I think. But still, that's only 6. Well, so first the shout out is that minor flooding. And when you turn on the news and you see whole families inundated with a lot of water, I am just very grateful. I did hear that if we also get out there that when leaves clog drains, so in front of your frontage, if you have a drain, just clean that out, and that prevents a lot of flooding. With the rain, we're still only 65% full on our reservoirs. Another thing that I learned is that 80% of all the water used is actually agricultural in the state. That's statewide. So we also need to encourage our farmers to be more efficient in their water use. So breakfast was fantastic. And other than just having a very good time with the firemen, it is one of the funnest times for me to just sit and visit with my neighbors that live across the street, but may be in another ecclesiastical unit.
Religious jurisdiction.
Yeah, religious jurisdiction. So, but it's just so fun to just sit and visit, and I sat and visited way too long, I know, but so I enjoyed it. Pleasant Grove baseball just won 14-4, and the 10 run rule again.
So
It
what are they
was
playing in?
So they play on Thursday at UVU. Dion,
For the
tell me if I'm
final?
right
I
or
don't
wrong.
know, this is.
No, this is not the final. This is
Semifinal?
still the semifinal. Roger's finding out for me who we're gonna play.
Well, they'll play the winner of Cottonwood and Lone Peak.
Cottonwood and Lone Peak are playing right now
now.
because they were also rain delayed.
It'd be really nice if it was Lone Peak.
No, we don't want Lone Peak.
Oh, yeah, we do.
That was the only team we lost to this whole season.
And we want them back.
Mm.
See, look at that. So
You have an
look at
odds
me, I'm like,
maker.
oh.
Will be Thursday at 11 a.m.
Thursday at 11 a.m., which brings me to another conversation. I will be out of town from 11, or from Thursday.
From 11 a.m. to.
From 11. No, dang it. I'm going out of town, Thursday through Monday, so I apologize, I will not be, but I will be there tomorrow. But
So you'll be back on next Tuesday.
I will miss the Memorial Day.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
No, I think that's sufficient.
Okay, thanks. Ben?
My questions have been answered. Thanks.
Sid?
No, good. It was great job on the breakfast. That was fun. That was really fun.
Saturday was a wild day. We did, a Rotary Service Project, the breakfast, a fancy Nancy party for my daughters. It was just every minute we were someplace different Saturday, but it was a great day. Really appreciated everything the city had to offer.
Nothing.
Okay, all right. Do we have any plats? None? Calendar? Just a Memorial Day program. And then interviews tomorrow. Now, do I understand correctly, it's going to be an executive session?
Executive session, and it will be in here.
So you have to open the regular meeting because it's been noticed and then move into executive
Okay.
session. You can't start in executive session.
So we're gonna get questions on that. Can you explain the rules around interviewing and executive sessions?
Yes, so because it's not a public office, if you'll remember when you were filling the vacancy on the council, that had to be done in the open and public meeting. But because this is a personnel matter, an administrative matter, obviously people have certain privacy rights. So those interviews can be done in an executive session. They will focus on the competency, physical and mental characteristics of an individual and how they fit into the specific job that we have open. But the rules of executive sessions are that you have to be in a regularly noticed public meeting and then make the motion to go into executive session.
Okay, so the only time the interviews have to be held in public is when it's for an appointed office. Okay.
A vacancy in the council.
Okay. All right, if no other questions, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I need to give a shout out to Dion real quick, because this time of year, I've been giving him I feel like a list, because it's outdoor stuff. And so, I just want to say thanks to Dion and his crew, because it's a lot of stuff going on. And I know his work piles up, but him and his crew do a great job maintaining the parks and whatnot around the city, and so I just appreciate that, so, and I'm just want to
Okay, motion to adjourn.
Yeah, make a motion to adjourn.
And I'll second that.
Motion by Diana, or motion by Eric, second by Diana, all in favor? Okay, thank you.
I always